All right, on the air. Hello, YouTube. We're going to get started in a few minutes. We're just getting settled here. We're going to check the audio. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Yeah. All right. You are delayed. You should be hearing me now. Yep. Cool. All right. If you're on YouTube listening, we're going to get started in a few minutes. We're still getting settled. Are you muted or? I'm muted. You should hear me. You can hear me. My sound's muted, not my audio. You can hear me, but you won't. I won't get feedback. Okay. Okay, we'll get started in a couple minutes. We're still waiting for some people, obviously, or we think there will be more people. So get settled. And if you haven't been here before, pizza's in the front, drinks and bathroom are in the back. So help yourself to a drink in the kitchen. Just don't drink our beer, as always say. Where's the zoom out? This work. Seems like they should let you zoom out so I can fit that on one page. Go with that. Do you want the most critical? Hey, Mr. Bachelor. Hey, how are you? Long time no see. Come in, make yourself at home. Still no chat. Still no chat. Still no chat. 3 people are watching. The other people that are on YouTube, can you chat something to us? We're going to watch the chat and see if we can get that working. Can you jump into YouTube and see if you can send a chat message so we can see it? Is anybody else having problems with the chat? I see 3 of you. Well, at least 2 of you are watching this. So. If you can hear me, type something in the chat. We'd see if we can see that. I wonder if I have to enable something. I don't think so. We've never had to enable live chat before. It just worked. Yeah, that usually works. Oh, you can't send a chat. Is that what you're saying? Maybe. Can you? I would like that. Oh, I'm not in it. I don't think so because I'm hosting. No. Oh, you're signed in now. All right. That's weird. Switch your account. Good call. Switch to your regular account. Maybe it's just there you go. Say something. That work? There we go. Hello. Beautiful. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. KCB on ball. Welcome. Come on in. Help yourself to some pizza if you're hungry. There's drinks in the back. We're just about to get started. Find yourself a chair somewhere in the mix. We have one lucky chair right in front. That was supposed to be Paul's, but someone would like to sit in the dunce cap era.
Oh, who dog is this?
It's Ike's dog.
Nice.
Yeah. That's Grimmy. His name's Grimmy.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 2 animals opposed to grimy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not grimy. Mm-hmm. I think it's Grimmy like Gremlins or something. Some book, some sci-fi book or something. Yeah. I don't know. Jason's dog is usually here too, which is a little puggle, so the 2 of them just run around in circles like crazy. Okay. 6:06. Let's go ahead and get started. The other people will just filter in. We'll go ahead and do it. We got some people on YouTube, so welcome. This is the first meeting of our Design UX track, so thanks for coming out. I see a handful of new people, so that is very cool. So I'll give you a quick overview of what TIG is about, introduce myself and Greg, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the track, and then we'll dive into it. Hopefully you guys had all had a chance to see our intro YouTube that I recorded a week ago or so, where we laid out what the first assignment was. Hopefully you got a little bit of time to go through that on a hack design course. We did lesson 0 and lesson 1 here, so we'll cover that as well in this meeting. So if you've never been to TIG, has anybody never been to TIG? New, cool. So for those of you, how did you find us? Was it just on Meetup or a referral? Yeah, friend, cool. User group. Oh, the main group. Okay, cool. Yeah, I heard Karcher announce it, and Steve announced it last night at the AWS Magic Night. I think if you guys went to that, the Lambda Sharp thing he did or whatever. So, I'll give you the quick idea of TIG was an immersion-based user group. So we had seen a bunch of user groups around, and we thought that they were pretty good for a high-level review of a topic, but you never really got a lot of meat. It was mostly content that you could have got yourself online in a video, and so we thought maybe there was room for a better way to do a user group. So we came with this concept of technology immersion group, and we really kind of call it a nerd book club. We all pick a book on a topic, and we sit down and we read it over a series of months. And so what you're signing up for is a user experience design track. What Greg and I have planned out is about 6 months worth of content. So we're gonna have 6 meetings, and there's activities that we'd like you to do in between the meetings so we can come back and discuss it. And we want a really deep knowledge of this track, of this topic, not just here's what Photoshop is and here's how you do it. So that's the approach we take in the TIGs. We've been doing it for 7 years, I think now. We've done a whole wide range of topics, .NET based, C#. We've done mobile, we've done JavaScript, we've done database, Angular, all of that stuff. So we want this to be a place for us to learn. We want it to be a collaborative environment. So we're here kind of mentoring the track, but we really want it to be an open discussion. And any questions you have, this is the place for them. We want this to be a safe space for you guys to ask questions. If you've never seen Photoshop before, for instance, you don't know anything about design, those are the questions that we want to answer. And so we're hoping that you'll be able to start from very little to no knowledge in this topic, and 6 months later, you should be fairly capable. Certainly more capable than probably a lot of developers in the industry. I think in this topic particularly, it's an area where most developers shy away from it. As someone who's interviewed developers for many years, one of the things I hear a lot that frustrates me is that people say, I ask them, what areas are you strongest at? What areas are you weakest at? Or what area in the stack what was that? Oh, we have audio issues? Audio is dropping now. Okay. What areas are you strongest at? What areas are you weakest at? And without fail, everyone says, well, I can do everything except the front end. I'm not really that good at the front end. I really would do better as a back end developer. And maybe that worked 10 years ago, but that really doesn't cut it these days as a developer. I think it's a skill set that we all should have. So that's my hope with this track, is that that is not going to be your answer to that interview question going forward. That you're going to say, oh yeah, I'm pretty capable on the front end, or I know my way around it. Or if you gave me a Photoshop file and said, can you turn this into a user interface? You can do that. So that's the gist of TIG. So we'll have reading assignments in between the months, and there's a meetup group, sdtig.com, just redirects to meetup. So you've probably already seen that. There's discussion boards on the meetup, and we want to encourage you to use the discussion boards in between the meetings. If you have questions that come up, we monitor those, the whole group monitors those, and we want everybody to kind of collaborate in that space. I think that's about it. Did I miss anything, Mike?
Yeah, in addition, if you have questions, please speak up, because we have people watching on YouTube. So if you use your outdoor voice, then they can participate in the conversation, and the recording sounds better.
Yeah.
If you miss a meeting, the meetings are recorded, so you can go on vacation, come back and join us again.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is, you actually do make a commitment when you're here. We've got free food and free mentors and free training, and we only ask a couple of things for you. Brad said one thing, and that is, if you have a question, please ask it. That's one thing we ask you to do. And the second thing is, if we ask you to do homework, please do it. So come prepared. And then about the homework, we've learned a lot from doing these tracks for a long time. And really, we're only probably going to ask you to do about 5 to 10 hours of homework per month, which we think is achievable. So we're not asking you to do 30 hours or 50 hours. It's just a few things. Maybe watch a video here or there, maybe answer a few questions, maybe do a lab. Brad and Greg spent a considerable amount of time thinking about this track. And so we also ask you to be appreciative of that work and respectful of it. And if you have any guidance for them to get better, please give that. But remember that they're volunteers, and they did spend a lot of effort to make sure this was quality content for you. So maybe just thank them.
Yeah, so we do have, you're welcome. So welcome, come in, there's pizza, help yourself, drinks in the back, restroom in the back. So we do have people on YouTube. Like I said, if you can't make it, we stream them live. We're streaming live. We have 6 people online, it looks like now. Excuse me, for those of you on YouTube, we are monitoring the chat. So if you have questions, please jump in. It looks like you guys are kind of already chatting, some audio issues maybe. So we will try to monitor the chat. It's not, I will say it's not as great to do it on YouTube. If you miss a meeting, it's great, but being here is the best experience because there'll be a lot of back and forth. Sometimes questions come from the back and you can't hear them. We try to remember to repeat them. This mic is pretty good, but it's a challenge. So, and the YouTube tends to be delayed. There's just a buffering. And so what I'm saying right now, these guys haven't heard yet. And a minute from now, they're going to hear it. So by the time they chat a question, we've moved on, and it's not great. I changed the setting, actually, YouTube people, I changed the setting this month to try to reduce the latency. So it was supposed to be optimized for interactivity. So the video quality might suck a little bit, but hopefully there won't be as big a delay. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so that being said, my name is Brad Cunningham, for those of you that don't know me, and this is Greg Friedman. And Greg is joining us as our kind of guest mentor this month, or this track. For TIG, what we try to do is we get topics that either one of the core mentoring group knows, myself or Ike or Scott Reed, who's not here today. The 3 of us have been running TIG for many years. And so if it's a topic that we're not super strong in, or we feel there's a better mentor in, we ask someone from the community to come help. Greg's been a longtime friend. He is our resident design expert. And so he's going to help us along with this track. We recently did a machine learning track, and Chris helped us out. Chris is kind of a machine learning expert. So we love to have community mentors. I don't know, Greg, if you want to share more about yourself and how amazing you are, or we can just say it ourselves. But
we just talk so they know whose voice it is. And my voice, this is Ike Ellis. I'm the Ike that Brad keeps referring to.
Yeah, that's Ike, Brad. And say hello, Greg.
Yeah, and I'm Greg. I've been building software for a long time and frustrated by software for a long time. And in my efforts to figure out why I'm frustrated so much by software, I've discovered that for many years we were doing it wrong, coming at it from the wrong angle, thinking about it from the wrong way. And it was discovering how to figure out what the user is going to be actually doing with this thing, whatever it is, where suddenly the software started being enjoyable to use. And so my whole career, even though I was a server developer and database developer and desktop application developer and web developer, all these different areas, it's always come back to there's always been this frustration with the end product, the actual using this product. And so I've been spending all these years trying to figure out how to make that better. And hopefully we can learn some things together during this course.
Yeah, so I think that's a good segue. What our vision was, or my view of this, was that the crowd would be primarily developers who wanted to learn a skill that they maybe knew nothing about. Tell me whether that's accurate. Let's put it this way. Any of you in the audience or on YouTube, would you consider yourself a designer more than a developer? Okay, so I assume you're all, and are you all software developers of some sort then? Yes.
Raise your hand. Raise your hand.
Yeah. Everyone's a software. Consider yourself a software developer. Okay, if you're not a software developer, what are you if you're not a software developer? Give me something.
I do training at a software company.
Training at a software company. And okay, I'll hold that next question because I think it's our first question. Anybody else that wouldn't consider themselves a software developer, what would you say you go? No? Yes? A student. Yeah. For computer science? What school do you go to?
Palmer College.
Palmer. Okay. Yeah. Cool. All right. Cool. Very good. Okay. So that mostly aligns with what we thought. We thought it was most people coming to this topic maybe didn't know a whole lot about design, and you're a developer, and so you interact with and build software. And you build software, as Greg said, primarily for end users. In fact, always for end users, even if that end user is yourself or someone else inside your company, you're always building it for an end user. And the frustration Greg's talked about is one of the things that we're hoping to give some tips and some tricks and some guidance about, like, here's some pitfalls you can avoid, here's some things you can think about, here's a skill set that you should have. For me, it's a skill set you should have in your tool belt. At Crafting Bytes here, we're at Ike and I and Scott and our team, we talk about being a polyglot developer. We talk about, every developer should know multiple software programming languages these days. You can't just be a C# developer. You can't just be a Java developer, really. We think you should know multiple. So you should know a functional language. You should know an object-oriented language. You should know your database development skills. And I think design needs to be in your tool belt as well. You should know when to use your design skills and how to apply your design skills. And it's actually probably a skill set you'll find once you get more comfortable with it, you'll use more than you ever thought, because most of the time you just ignore the UI.
I have a question. How many of you here feel like there's something intrinsic about your nature that makes you bad at design? Like, feel like
That's the developer mindset.
it's a talent, and that talent is something that escapes you.
You mean like I can do a mean stick figure?
So,
So that's an interesting segue. How many of you think you have to be good at art to be good at design? Okay.
so Billy, do you guys know who Billy Hollis is? He's really big in the .NET community. And I saw him speak 5 years ago. And he stood up in front and he said, how many of you are bad at design? And there were 300 people in the room, and it must have been 300 that raised their hands, right? And he said, that is not true. That is not true. He said, because I know you can recognize good design from bad design, because you get frustrated when you use something that was poorly designed, and you really enjoy something that was used well. And the only difference between you and anybody else who's designing is your capacity to empathize with your user and think of what life would be like if you were them. So just because you don't practice that skill, I know you have it, and now we're going to teach you to practice it. And that really had a big effect on me, because he said the days of being a programmer and not empathizing with your user are over. They're over. You can enjoy it while it lasts, but there's an expiration date on that life for you. So now's the time to join the rest of the world and decide that you're going to see the world from someone else's perspective.
Very good. So I think Greg had a couple of questions. I think we introduced the track. Maybe before we go any further, does anybody else have any questions just about TIG in general, or just high-level questions about this track? Okay. So Greg has some high-level questions. We want to kind of get feedback from you about, and it will help us shape where we take this track. We have an idea of the content we're covering and how we're going to break it up across months, but we want to make sure this is as valuable to you as possible. So,
Right.
we'll
So
do that.
we posted this TIG. I don't know exactly what we called it, UI, UX design, I'm not sure. And then, so you came to it thinking, what is it you're hoping to get out of this? What is it that you're interested in this very vague terms that aren't even, some are just initials together, UI, UX. So it just opened the room to the discussion. Why are you here? What do you hope to get out of it?
Jason?
So I've been a lot of the technical side of it, like technically CSS or doing good HTML structure-wise, right? I don't know at the higher level how to compose a page, how to do workflow, or how to do, the way that you should interact with it.
Okay.
So that's what I'm interested in.
When you say the way the users interact, you describe a web page, right? Is that what you said specifically? And
So how
so,
do they come to the page? What are they looking for? Concrete example, I was doing, and I asked you this, is I was doing this table, right? And I said, how can I make this look better? And you said, well, the way you've lined this up, the user now sees it vertically and not horizontally. As soon as you pointed that out, I'm like, you're right. It's totally disrupts the way the user's seeing this page. And I want to be able to start seeing those things instead of just saying, here's finely crafted HTML. Who cares if the user sees it,
right.
in the way that you're not expecting.
Okay, that's great. I like that.
I think on top of, besides, the UX side of it, we can make, complex, or not, when I say complex, I mean like, not beginner websites that look like a 5-year-old made them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I use Bootstrap for everything and go from there, Occasionally I'll get like a theme for it.
Ooh, Bootstrap. Expert.
Awesome.
And why
So you want to not use Bootstrap, is what you're saying?
It's not that I don't want to use Bootstrap. I don't want it to be as obvious that I use Bootstrap.
Yeah.
Just that it's not. So like everything doesn't look like a graduate, like
Senior
a senior
project.
Yeah,
And
senior project.
have you tried making something that looked
I don't
more
know
like what?
how.
Try. So you don't know where to start.
Don't know where to start. Okay.
Okay.
Again, on the web, though. That's your primary.
Well, yeah. Well, that's mostly what I program.
I know how to add padding and margin, but how much padding or margin do I add?
It depends.
Yeah.
A little, just a little.
Okay.
Yeah. Eric.
And when you say padding and margin, are you
I mean, yeah. So
are you thinking?
In fact,
it's
you
aesthetics
want to
of-
add just enough. That's what you
Yeah,
want. Just
just enough.
and no more.
So, yeah. So,
But in
I'm really bad at aesthetics.
Okay.
I'm really bad at maybe like that empathy.
When-
That level of empathy is not.
When you say aesthetics, do you mean visually you want it to look pretty, or that, more to Jason's point, you want someone to understand what it is you're trying to convey?
I want it
Or
to look pretty, and I want it to feel natural and
Feel
draw my eye
natural.
in the right direction.
Mhm.
So, like that natural feeling.
Mhm.
There were a lot of interesting things done in lesson 1 with how they laid it out, and it's like just nothing I'd ever think of doing.
Okay.
Like the tiles that you could click on and.
Oh yeah,
just
yeah. I know what
navigate
you're talking
through.
about.
Like there's all a bunch of little things in there, but it's kind of it's stuff like that where it's like, oh yeah, it's pleasing and fun and
Mm.
natural.
Did I ever tell you about the poetry class I took in college? Which I promise this is on topic.
Okay.
I read the syllabus and I saw the poem and I read it. In a rare act, I read it ahead of time. And I did some research on the poem. And then the professor stood up and he talked about this poem. And he said, "What do you think it means?" And the class had an open discussion. And I was looking for a way to show how smart I was, right? So they had this discussion, and I said, actually, the author says that this isn't quite right, that poem actually means this, right? And I'll never forget what the professor said. The professor said, "The author's wrong." It turns out words have meaning, and those meanings are irrelevant of your intent, right? And this poem means this, and it's out of the author's hand whether or not it did as he intended it to do or not. In this case, if that was really the intent, the author failed, because that poem is up to us to interpret. And I think that applies to user design,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think the software example I can think of that is when Twitter came out, the hashtags were not a feature of the platform. It was just like, oh, we never intended you to use it that way. And the user started using it and the platform adopted what they did. It doesn't matter what you thought your system would do. If you thought it was just 140 characters, they're making meaning out of your system, whether you wanted it or not. And so you better adapt. Like they're making your system more usable. So I think that totally applies. Eric, you have something?
Okay. Just a quick question. In a particular technology area, is it in web? Is it in desktop? Is it in, or just, is it in print media?
Mobile?
For those, yeah. So for those who know me, I've done development on mobile, web, game development. And so probably I have a big interest in where it could apply to like abnormal UI. And so especially in game development, pleasing abnormal UI, because I've seen the same stuff on the web and people tell me how it should look and I'm like, okay, great. But
You're talking
I really-
specifically about this page, right? When you're talking about all the crazy
so
stuff
like,
they do.
This is like, okay, I would have never
Right. And they
done this. And like
they have
going
call-outs
down
here.
to those buttons below. And then this thing, like it's just not something I'd ever have created.
Yeah.
So like that,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know, maybe not. I'm hoping to get something out of this for that. But
well, also, I don't know that it's fair to compare yourself to a rock star designer, right? Like you
That's
just
true.
want to put a little more effort than zero,
Yeah.
right? Like I gave some thought, and I'm doing better. So, yeah, I actually have a similar goal about my goal for this track, and that is I do data visualization a lot. And in data visualization, the theory is lagging behind web developers and application designers. So if I lag behind the UX designers, I'm leading in data visualization, so that when I create my artifacts for my end users, they think I'm a Rembrandt, when in reality, I'm just like Charles Schultz, right? I'm not going to win any awards because of my beautiful artwork, but it's good enough to impress the customer.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to taking some of the things we've learned and applying it to something that might seem boring to you, like line charts and bullet graphs and trend lines, but to a business stakeholder, they want to be able to glance at something, derive meaning, and lead them to action as quickly as possible without a lot of interpretation.
Right.
I second that.
Okay. Now Eric's got something.
Okay.
So your goals.
I have two main issues. I made a main web app, so around 2,000 web pages. It's fairly large, all web-based. My problem is feature versus ease of use. Is that I've got users that go from the simple use like teachers to administrators.
Sure.
And there's a constant battle between the features and ease of use and how it looks. And many of my customers, at first, they don't find the product pretty, but afterward, they find it more powerful than others. So how can I make it pretty, but still keep the features? And how can I make it simple to use, but still have the features?
Right.
So it's a battle between those. So I'm hoping that going through this 6 months, to help me do better decisions.
Sure.
So that kind of leads me to another thing. Which is
Can you
snap
kick the
decisions.
air down? I think the air shut off, so it's gonna get hot in here. Somebody just press the down arrow. You should be able to press the down arrow and it hopefully
So-
kicks on. You might have to press the mode
I
button.
want to be able to make snap judgments about design.
Judgment.
Wait.
What do you mean?
Wait. You want to
So-
make a
so
snap
I'm
judgment
curious-
about whether something is well designed or poorly designed, or whether you got it right.
I think maybe a little bit what you're saying is that when you're in the moment of creating a feature and you're not heavily engrossed in the, you're thinking, okay, I need this feature. I don't need this in-depth. You're not thinking about the in-depth design of it. And so is there a point in which you can say, okay, well, this is a reasonable design for now, and kind of like, what's better than I'm doing now, but with a decision made as quickly as I've made it in the past.
Right. Should be a green light that comes on if you got that right.
And
by
I
the way.
think a key element here,
Okay, Scotty might know how to do it.
I think a key element here is you're saying a feature, but what we're building is something a human being is going to use to accomplish some goal. And while you could take any incredible feature and apply graphic design methodologies to it, that isn't necessarily going to end up with software that accomplishes this thing you want, where it's simple, and it's because the look of it, the prettiness of it, is often a separate thing from how someone's experience of it. So user experience covers this sort of broader view. Now, you should have both of those things, I think, ultimately, and hopefully we'll get both of those things. And the good news is design is really just, I did something on purpose. I had a reason. I mean, we're all designers because we design software. That's design, and hopefully you are like your designs and you feel like you're thinking about it, and well, why should, am I going to make this a class? Am I going to make this a function? Is this going to be a separate module? That's all design. And you're able to look at a good version of software and a bad version of software, the code, or database tables, and say, is this good design? That's the same thing. It's just, I'm making a decision to do it a certain way. And with visual design, since it's just maybe a question of, well, I don't quite know the words to use to describe it. I don't quite know the things that make this have a purpose, but you can learn those. There's not too much there to learn. And once you have it, then you can make your decisions about, I'm designing this interface because I'm choosing to push these closer together because they're related and this further apart, so you feel like it's a separate section. And then you're there.
Good. Do we have anyone on YouTube?
There was a comment. Yeah.
Comment,
Oh, Paul, you.
they're not humans, they're users, is what Pete Ashford is saying.
Excellent. They're not humans. Yeah, because they could be aliens.
Yeah, that's true. Or servers. User interface should be intuitive.
How many arms?
So, okay, so you can kind of just go down to the next question. Unless anybody else had any feedback of what you wanted to get out of the track.
We didn't hear from everyone. Who else has thoughts?
How I don't know how to make you guys not be too busy.
Not be too busy.
Guys, not be
That's a good one.
too busy. That's a great one.
Like this might be sacrilegious, but that page you showed, this is not how design works. That page is too busy.
Oh, this one? Yeah.
There's like what font sizes,
Mhm.
text over the page.
Mm-hmm.
There's like
It's true.
knobs for a toddler to turn.
Mm-hmm.
There is.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I agree with Scotty. Your comment was you could never think of that, but I'm not even sure this is representative. I don't know that I particularly like this as much as
Sure.
other
It does
things I've
have the
seen.
margin and padding that Chris wanted.
Yeah,
Just
so it's
enough.
It's
though.
got all the
Just
margins
not
and
too
padding.
much.
They knew how
but
much margin and how much
just
padding
enough,
to use.
right,
Just enough.
Just
John and then Bill. What do you got?
So for me, I'm kind of newly diving into mobile development, and so it's a brand new world of design as far as my desktop and web background goes. So I'm looking to learn as much as I can about making
It's a good call. I wonder what this page looks like.
Smoothly
on mobile.
on mobile. Specifically on mobile? Is
Yeah.
your focus, okay. Okay.
And how does factor
Just scaled. Garbage is what it looks like on mobile.
I think we have a full meeting on mobile, right?
Yeah. There's a month on mobile specifically, but we'll get there. We're debating on whether we actually keep that meeting, whether it's actually relevant. So that's good.
But all of this is going to help us. We hope to build the course sort of iteratively based on what everybody wants and is doing.
I am working on mobile stuff.
I want to get down. There is, I believe, some core good design standards. So, like you can say, well, Bootstrap is a good standard, but then I want to get a better feel for when to move away from the good standard, whether it's to draw attention to something or because that wouldn't work right in that standard.
Mm-hmm.
Then the funny stuff is some people say your app is too bootstrappy, they want to get away from it.
Yeah.
Well,
And you've over bootstrapped.
I don't want to just do Bootstrap.
Yeah.
Bootstrap has its place. It does
Yeah.
really well.
It sounds like it's more like a higher level thing.
How and when stuff.
There are universal principles of design, as my book we'll talk about later says. There are some principles of design, and there's the golden ratio, and there's all this stuff about layout, and then when do you break those rules? And as Greg said, design is intent. If you sat down and had intention and did it with an intention, and you knew why you did it, then and knowing when to do that's good.
Well, Peter from online, he wanted to add more about that. They're not humans, they're users comment that he said. He said that, I didn't put the context in, and he's right for that comment. If you didn't look at most UIs, they appear to have been created to be used by machines instead of humans.
Yeah,
basically.
excellent. Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're the human-computer interaction model is broken because they're not built for humans to interact with them.
But to kind of go on what Scotty was saying, like I'm enormously frustrated at Amazon RDS all the time. Not just like a quarter of the time, but like
Enormously frustrated with just Amazon's cloud management studio. Period. Like
it's like it's difficult for me to know what I'm buying, how much I'm paying,
Mhm.
what I'm actually getting for it, what my options are.
Mhm.
Why are there 7 products that all look the same?
Mhm.
Right.
How come the marketing language looks the same on every single page?
Yeah.
And I'm an expert at I'm supposed to be an expert on this, right? And I write books on Azure, and I look at a page and I ask myself, if I didn't really know what this product was, would I know what I was doing right here?
Yeah.
Would I know how to use this and when to use it? And the answer is always no. And then I look at Google. I don't know if you've looked at Google's platform GCP lately, but GCP, in my opinion, has it really almost perfect, where you know what you're buying, you know what it does, and you know when you're making a pivotal decision and what that decision actually means for the rest of your platform. And how did they do that?
Right.
That seems like magic to me. How can huge companies that have billions of dollars in business get it so wrong, and then one company get it so right?
Yeah. There's a comment, I just have a bunch of notes, but you reminded me of a comment from the Objectified movie, which we'll go into more, but I think kind of what you're saying is what they said in more of the industrial design sense. The question they ask as designers is, would you buy this? Would you spend your own money on it? Like, if you built it, would you be able to use it? If you're the guy who built the Amazon AWS cloud interface to manage, do you really use that interface to manage EC2 instances? The answer has to be no. There's no way that those people use that on a daily basis and think, this is okay.
Yeah.
It's called
That's like, what's that guy with everything's on fire behind him? Everything's fine. Like the whole world's burning down. There's no way they use that. They have to use terminal. They use terminal like this, right?
My
Because
belief
they're
is
gluttons.
that Amazon, they have MVP UI, which does not include design. Because they think every one of their interactions that you have over there, their MVP is not include design.
Yeah.
And they just
Question there?
I just wanted to find like general guidelines for the layout and that sort of thing, but also I want to get better at talking with my designers when I want to start a conversation with them instead of just sounding like I'm criticizing them all the time.
And you're a engineer, right? Software developer. Okay. And you have designers on staff you work with. Okay. And what platform? Web, mobile, web. Okay. And mobile. Okay. Cool.
And so what sort of criticisms?
Well, they never do anything wrong.
Ever? No, of course not.
But what sort of things are you trying to give feedback on?
Just we're to make it engage in a conversation with them about it. I think some of them are really good about saying they have a long story about how they got to where they are. And maybe when they revisited something, they didn't think about all the pieces again. And that, yeah, you're right, this one doesn't make sense. But just
so like you want to collaborate as part of it?
Collaborate.
Like a common language for you to be able to talk back and forth.
Okay.
When I think it looks funny, I want to be able to articulate that better.
Right. What does funny mean? Right.
They're not respecting the golden ratio.
Yes. This is clearly not 70% of the. Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
You know the golden ratio, the rule of thirds is built into our phones now. You've noticed that, right? In every smartphone, you can turn on the grid, right? So the rule of thirds is a 3x3 grid, and that you frame a picture or you frame a design so that it's equal. It's split up into that golden proportion. So
Samsung got that wrong.
most people don't even know that, but if you go in, it's not on by default. And I don't know why, but it's a setting in the phone. You click it and you say, turn a 3x3 grid on. Right. And the thing is, how do you balance the weighting of the 3x3 grid thing comes from like photography composition. But anyways, all right, good.
Anyone else?
Next bullet.
Jared. Okay. I mean, we got into a little bit of why you're interested, and also what you hope to get out of it. I think so. That was a sort of a next thing. And then just, are there any specific questions you have? Any? Just to sort of gather, we won't necessarily answer them now, but something to make sure that by the end of this class we've answered.
Yeah, so to give you some more context, one of the things we're doing too is, it's actually kind of a design exercise that Greg and I do when we look at interfaces and we look at accomplishing a goal. We look at something and say, how do we gauge success? And that's something we'll ask our customers. How do we gauge success? What does it mean that this product was successful? What is the metric we captured to decide if it's successful? So we're kind of dogfooding that here. We want to get a list of the questions you have, even if we don't answer them for 4 months. And then we'll go back at the end of the track and say, did we answer all of these? And that's a way for us to say, oh, we were successful. So we want to know what you wanted to get out of it, what your questions are. Did you show up to this with one burning question, like how much is enough padding? So we'll put that 10 pixels. And I've already answered that, just enough. So then we're good. So success. So far, we're 1 from 1. So is there anything else you guys can, even if they're really specific, we'll note them down and stuff,
The thing I like to do is almost all the times I need the UI, I have the data or the function first.
Yeah.
Put the UI on top of it. I'd love to come the other way and just say, okay, here's the intent of this site or whatever. How do I do wireframes or all this navigation or general fonts / headers, like all that layout first, and then bring everything.
So how do you design from the user's perspective first rather than the system's perspective? Okay.
And I want to know how to deal with preconceived notions, like when executives come to us and say that they know what they want, and then what they want is wrong. All
right. Well, I will say, if I could answer that question for you, I'd be a billionaire. So
they don't even know the job. They don't even know the job they're designing for.
Right.
They're designing an app they will never physically use.
All right.
So how do you
persuasion.
lead them to making good design choices when you're trying to sell a design?
Okay. That's good. Good design choices when you're selling it. Yeah.
Is incremental UI design and UX design a thing, or is it something where you want to?
How do you iterate on design? How do you evolve a design? Yeah. I mean, we'll get into this way more, but the answer is absolutely yes. Just like software, you're never going to get right on the first time. Absolutely, the design has to evolve and change. And, yeah, absolutely.
And that's because we're usually not the one using it, and a lot of these questions you really can never answer until you actually put it in front of the person who's using it.
And if you noticed,
they'll be lost and confused and clicking the picture because they think it's a button. And then you've got design work changes to make. So
you had said you watched the Objectified video, right? So if you noticed in there, they went to the design firm that did the potato peeler, and they had the OXO grip, and he took out that box, and he's like, here's all the iterations on the handle we did. Yeah. And he saw like 90% of them looked really close, and then there was a pile of them that were like, dude, that's totally wrong. So clearly design is iterative, right? They spent months and months and months, and and the same thing with the hedge trimmers or the pruners, right? And they had different handles. And then they said, we got to the point where we 3D printed like the best 15, and then we took them out and used them, and then we iterated some more. So yeah, I think absolutely you have to do that. So. Cool. Okay. Did you have anything else on your?
No,
any other questions that you guys had? Any other?
Well, that made me think of Microsoft used to have the usability labs. I don't know if they still do that. And then, and then the other thought was, anybody remember that Bob operating system?
Mm-hmm.
And was that the one where it was an office and you could pull out files out of the file cabinet and things like that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. Microsoft Bob. Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about. It's this thing. Yeah.
And
Bob.
the idea was it's supposed to be for humans.
Yeah, it was like King's Quest. Yeah. It was like a video game, right?
Well, I thought it was supposed to be kind of like your UI for your.
It was a reimagining of the desktop or whatever, right? So like.
Yeah. So at least they made the effort.
There's this thing Apple was really big on. They're holding strong to, and in fact, the initial versions of Windows did the same thing. It's like I'm going to mispronounce the word skeuomorphism, skeuomorphism, right?
Oh, yeah.
So they try to make these digital things like as if they're. That's why we have folders, like the folder in Windows is a folder, and you have a clipboard and then. And Apple has held really strong to that for the longest time. In fact, have they changed it? I don't think they have. The one, so contacts is still, you're going to see people's phone numbers, so I should like close this, but they changed it a little bit, but contacts is still like a contact book with tabs on it. They held really strong to this idea that like they want these to feel like real objects. And it's an interesting topic because I think you get people going back and forth saying that's not right. That's not like they've done some things that went too far down that route and they've had to give up on it and just say, you can't do that. This is a computer. People have been so conditioned. This is digital. It's a computer. It's not a real object, and you've gone too far in that regard. But Bob was an attempt to do that too, like bring you into a world. Virtual reality and AR is going to change that paradigm because you're going to put your head on, and some of it will be real. Like you put this headset on, and there is physical objects, and now it's a little weird, right? So
interesting.
Yeah, it'll be different. So.
Let's say it was a floppy disk.
Still a floppy disk forever.
Yeah.
Most of the people that are using computers now don't even know what a floppy disk was. So yeah, you see it all over the place in computers, right? It's long lived. I mean, so OneNote does it, right? I use OneNote to organize notes, and OneNote is notebooks and sections inside notebooks and their tabs, and they're trying to replicate what is a physical thing. And there will be people like that come along that have never used a notebook with tabs. They've never used a Franklin Covey notebook with tabs. They're like, what is this? I don't even understand the design language. Why are there tabs? That makes no sense. Why are there tabs in Chrome? I don't know. It's just because it's the way we organize things.
Think about the battle that happened when Microsoft came with the Metro.
Yeah, so the Metro is very interesting because their original design language was called Metro because they modeled it after metro signs. When you go into these world capitals and how subways navigate, when you look at a subway map and you see like indications of where you're supposed to go and the different colors in the tracks and the red, green, that was their inspiration for the design language, which is why they called it Metro. And they thought, well, these tiles are high-level indicators. These are stations that the subway will stop at, and then you dive into the station and you learn more. They don't call it Metro anymore because that design language fell apart pretty quickly on them, but that was their attempt. Okay.
So any other questions that we hope to try and answer by the end of this?
Are you going to cover CSS? Or is that
Hey,
all
Paul,
separate topic?
Can you give me a power adapter?
We're going to touch
There's one in my
on
bag, or
it,
you can have whatever.
as far as what? You just like, what is it and how to use it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I already know CSS. But
Okay.
You can get one out of my bag if you need.
I mean,
I got one in my bag.
we'll be getting into how to apply ideas to various environments, the web being one of them. There's some responsive, an area unresponsive, interactive.
Yeah, so that's a good question too, and you can help to refocus us if we go to high level. A lot of this content in hack design is high level, and I think we'll jump a little into the next section here, which is let's just discuss the first month's content. So the first month was Hello World, and Hello World's exercise here was just to watch the Objectified documentary. I had watched it originally on Netflix. I've been told since it's not on Netflix for streaming, it's on Netflix for DVD, but hopefully you found it. You can get it from this Daily Motion link, or I watched it on YouTube last night to refresh myself.
You can rent it from Amazon.
You can rent it from Prime. Some people paid to rent it from Prime or whatever. You can get it on iTunes, but there was free options too. So that was step one. And then step two was really just to, what is design? Why is it important? And the idea here in the intro was to just level set your expectations of what we're going to be talking about. And I think you probably got from the Objectified movie that this is pretty like touchy-feely and like high level conceptual. So in that vein, this isn't really meant to be a CSS track. We've actually already done one of those. We've done an HTML and CSS track. It's not really meant to be that. It's meant to be a higher level conceptual track, which it sounds like aligns with a lot of your goals. I think that's what you guys are saying. But if we're going too far in one direction and we're getting too esoteric, then let us know. Like for instance, next month's content will be typography. We're spending a lot of time just learning about fonts, which sounds crazy, except when you get into them, you'll realize how important that is. And then I'm sorry, but you're going to be very frustrated with the way your world exists now because you're going to look at fonts on signs everywhere and get super pissed when people use the wrong font. So sorry, I'm about to ruin your life. But and so they're going to be like that. It's going to be high level conceptual. We're going to talk about like design principles, and these things will not be specific to software necessarily. There will be things specific to software, but there are things that are just general design principles in physical product design, in industrial design, in software design, in print design, and graphic design where they follow a lot of the similar principles. And so that's what we're really going to be focusing on. So we may do some specifics about CSS and that sort of thing, but that really isn't the intent of the track. It's really meant to be more conceptual in nature, more design principle. Also, I know there's some people like you guys, for instance, have hardware devices. There are people who write software and it runs on hardware devices that your company produces. And there's probably interface design stuff for that hardware device. In fact, I came up with one for you that I need to tell you. The kit, the thing on the bottom with the lights faces the wrong direction when it's mounted to the wall. You know, when I called you the other day and said it was, and I said, hang on a second, I got really mad because I had to lean over because the lights were parallel with the wall and it should be rotated. So there you go. That was a simple thing that was frustrating. I'm like, I can't see the lights when I address the device from the front. I have to look to the side, but the device is always mounted on a wall. So my head is being smashed into the wall to see the lights. There you go. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, I could rotate it, but it isn't really meant, like the way the threading is, it's meant to be screwed in. It stops parallel with the wall. And so to see the lights, I have to do this thing, and it should just be, the light should be facing us. So there you go. Anyways.
I would love for you to submit that to our.
You got it.
It's like speakers on the phone. Speakers always shoot away from you instead of towards you.
Speakers on, this guy?
Yeah, if you're on the phone.
Oh, that face down.
Yeah, they face down. Yeah.
That's why everyone talks on it like it's a piece of pizza, right? Like, hello. I hate that thing. Yeah,
I
and
can really hear so many people doing this.
So I have a bunch of notes. How many people got to watch Objectified? Okay, awesome. How many people hated it? Okay, good. I was expecting like huge rejection of this because it was so touchy feely. I thought developers, this is BS. That's what I was thinking. So. There was some very documentary like things where you had a dramatic pause with the sound of machines making trash cans or whatever. I agree. I had a ton of notes on it, just interesting stuff. You know, we can go through this. However, if anybody had questions about it or anything you liked in particular that's interesting, let me know. Just throw out your ideas. So I thought the first 5 to 10 minutes of that movie was phenomenal. Like it just hit on exactly why design matters. And the very intro quote, which I think is on purpose, the way they made the documentary, was to get you hooked on the very intro quote with Johnny Ive just saying, as soon as your initial impression of a device, as soon as you see something, you make so many assumptions about that thing immediately. How much it should cost, what the build quality is like, what its purpose is, how you should use it, how much it should weigh, like instantly as soon as you see something. And I think that's true in software too. As soon as you open a program, if that thing comes up and looks like it was built 10 years ago, you're instantly like, this is a piece of crap software. I don't want it. I don't want anything to do with it. Because your impression has already thrown you off, right? So I thought that's kind of set the tone for the whole movie, in my opinion, is that people have this initial impression, and design, as Greg said, design is really about intention. So if you had an intention to design and you made a conscious decision, then you can change people's initial impression.
Can I add something to what you said, which is, I don't think it's true that a user would not want to use an old piece of software. I think if they see an old piece of software and the message is, we didn't think about how to put this together, we didn't make a intentional effort to lay this out, we just went with what we had. Like if that's the experience the user has. But if I were to build a new product and make it look like an old product, you could have a user look at that and an instant reaction would be, well, I'm happy to use it because there's something, someone went through and made decisions about how to put all these things together. And I think that's what Johnny Ive, what he's getting at is that when a person sees something, they might not recognize how much work went into it, but it'll communicate that this was really thought through. This was, and that's, again, design as a word. It just means this, we thought this through. We made specific decisions. Everything has a point to it. Every decision, everything about this, we actually thought about, well, how curvy should this corner be, right? And they probably tried 100 different iterations on how curvy a corner is, and we don't realize it, but our impression is somebody really thought this through, and that's what.
It's probably so when I pick my laptop up in the corner, it fits into my hand, which it does perfectly, and I can grab it with one hand and it works, right? So he said something else I thought was really interesting, makes you really think. He said, from the moment you wake up, everything you interact with has been designed. You don't realize how much of your world is designed. I'm sitting here while he was talking, I looked out and I saw the lid to that trash can and I said, I wonder why that's curved. And then I instantly said, oh, it's probably so people don't stick trash on top of it so it doesn't pile up and it will just slide up. That's so trivial, you wouldn't have thought about it, but everything you interact with is designed, you know, especially since, you know, nature is so few and far between in our worlds these days. So, but yeah, I thought that was very interesting. It makes you really think about, well, it goes on to the second point, really, which was in the second section, I had that little quote from the guy about angry designers. And you just get so angry because you find that so much of the world needs fixing. And now that I recognize that someone's intention was to do that, like this curvy thing was done on purpose for some reason, and then you start to think why. And if it annoys you, you start to get frustrated with someone's intent. So
and that's, I think, if you've been a developer and feel like you haven't been a designer, I think that's one of the sort of key first steps is starting to look at everything and ask, why was it done that way?
Yeah, and that's exactly what he says. He says, why is it like this and not like that?
Right.
Why did you do it this way and not that way? And Paul had mentioned something earlier. I think the takeaway from that movie for him was that most of those designers they interviewed in that at some point said, the goal of our design is to keep editing, to remove until we get it down to the absolute minimum that will do the job. And Johnny Ive says, how can I take these 5 things and make one thing do all 5 things? Like,
except the Dutch, I think they were putting buttons on their sofas or something like that.
She did. The whimsical design looked like they were there for no reason, and she just stuck those buttons on at the last minute. Right, that's true. And then, so Johnny Ive said, like, the design that makes you think, why is it like this and not like that, would be an indicator of bad design. Like, you walk up to something and say, that's not right. Why? Like, these stupid IKEA chairs, no one can ever fold these back up correctly. Watch when we leave and I ask you to fold these chairs up, no one will get it right. And you go, why the hell did they do that? And I bet IKEA did it because of some like shipping thing, or like it was optimized for their part. Yeah, it was optimized for their industrial design machine because it could cut it that way. It's so unnatural to fold those chairs. It screws with my brain every single time. The flip side of that, as Johnny Ive says in the movie, is he says, when you pick something up and you go, well, of course it's designed this way. How else would it be designed? You don't even think about it. So most people say, you don't realize how much of your world is designed because it feels so natural. When you pick an object up, it just works. Yeah. You go, of course. And you don't even question because you don't think it could be designed any other way because it's just obvious. That's the way it was supposed to be designed. The iPhone is a great case. You pick it up, there's only one button. I handed my grandma an iPhone years ago and she picked it up and she pressed the button and it worked. And people are like, how'd grandma figure it out? I'm like, well, there's only one button. What is she gonna do? Like, I think she picked it up. I think she did this. She hit it and she went, I pressed the button. Done. Of course it's built like that, right? Like, of course. Well, how else would you build it? Yeah.
Well, Peter added, why done that way is the first step, and how can we make it easier to use? It should always be the second question. And then my point to the movie, another one I found interesting was that they said they designed it for the extreme users.
Yeah.
And
that was really interesting.
The middle people just fall in line.
That was interesting. I think you kind of said that you weren't sure about. That was something we hadn't thought about before. And there's a book I have here, we'll talk about some more too, called Designing for Emotion. And the very beginning of what they say is design for your extreme cases, because those are the people, in their case, those are the people you don't want to offend. And so make sure your design meets what would be your extreme audience, because the middle is not as hard to design for. And they say the middle will fall into place. I don't know. It's interesting. It's a different way to think about it.
Extremely what?
Depends on what you're building. What is the extreme?
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
in the
So the movie it was
someone who-
arthritis.
yeah.
It was a person with a potato peeler, and they said the potato peeler was optimized for someone who could grasp the potato peeler and just peel it. But what about the woman who has arthritis and can't really hold the grip? So they made it, and he said like, oh, doggy, it's okay. And he said children's crayons. My daughter is 2, and she has these big fat crayons, and she can pick them up, and she always goes for the big fat crayons because it's easier for her to hold. Well, those are the 2 extremes: the child and the arthritic person who don't really have the dexterity. Me, I can do this fine. I'll pick up that potato peeler with like a squishy handle, and it's fine. It doesn't offend me. I don't even think about it. But the other people are really pleased because you designed for the extreme. So that's kind of what their example was.
Mm-hmm. And then for some software developer, many products, there's the novice mode or the expert mode.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's kind of their solution about dealing with these
It
extremes.
is, yeah.
Right, right.
Advanced,
And
basic, or
it's good for
advanced. Yeah.
training, by the way.
Mhm.
Well, and that was I struggled with that in the movie because I actually feel like picking your one user actually in software is, and it's actually Alan Cooper, who we'll probably end up talking about and has written some books, is kind of an approach that he believes in. And so it's a little bit, in conflict with this idea, but maybe they work together because maybe it's extreme versions of this one user or something. But, it's an interesting question for me as we go through this, is to think about, well, how does extreme, but you don't really want to build for all the edge cases, or you end up with this completely complicated,
Mhm.
and so something
Yeah.
we'll get into, I guess, as we talked about. I wanted
The thing that
to,
frustrates me about design is how every new designer on a new project feels they need to put their mark on that.
yeah.
Like the chairs
Add another.
in the movie.
So
Everybody designed a chair.
the guy with the crazy.
No, like
the-
everyone had a chair that
They
they
did,
were working on. Like in every office in that
Right,
movie,
right.
they had a
Had
chair
to make
that
a
was
chair.
mid.
my favorite
process.
feedback from that was the guy, the really crazy guy with the white fingernails and the pink and the crazy pink side.
Yeah.
That guy is like a fairly famous chair designer. He has like a really famous chair. And his answer was, why in the hell do we have uncomfortable chairs in this world?
Yeah.
How is it
So angry
possible
about it.
at this day and age that anyone has built a chair that's uncomfortable? Hey, hush, hush, talk.
Or hard to fold.
Yeah, or hard to fold. Why is that even? I mean, and those are uncomfortable and hard to fold.
Both of them.
Yeah, they're both. How is that even possible, right? And so somebody said, like, why would you design something that someone's already designed? Why would you build a chair? Right? Can you do it better in some way than anybody else? I don't know.
Maybe it's uncomfortable to keep you awake.
Oh,
There you go. See, it's a feature.
interesting.
That's why these ones are uncomfortable, so you guys don't fall asleep.
I wanted to follow up with the simplicity, taking stuff away. There's actually a few quotes that I've always liked related. One's from Einstein: "Everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler." So whoever said about the couch and the buttons, her belief was that taking those buttons away was too simple, that it lost something at that point. So it's not just take everything away, it's take everything away until taking more away, ruins the thing.
That's kind of like the cell phone too, where he like had designed it like a peeled potato.
The little
Yeah,
red one.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
like just stuff you can fill with.
Right,
It's like,
right,
that's
right.
not gonna apply to chairs.
The author of The Little Prince, I won't try and pronounce his name, but his quote is, "Perfection is achieved not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing left to take away." And then Pascal, the mathematician, said, in describing a letter he had written to someone, he wrote at the end, "I've made this longer than usual because I have not had time to make it shorter." So that's another concept here, is that it actually takes a lot of work to get down to this simplicity. That's not where you start. And so when you pick up something and it's like, oh, this is so easily designed, I could never do that. They've been working on that for years. This is so much work went into making it feel like the perfect design. And so, yeah, we're going to have this reaction like, well, how could I ever do that? You put the work in too, and it'll happen.
Yeah, but again, the problem in software, at least, they're like fashions. At one point, every button had to be raised in 3D.
Mhm.
After that, it had to be flat. It had to be straight corners.
Right.
So by the time you start to redesign, you already passed beyond the next fashion.
So they had a point in Objectified about that, which was the next thing I was going to talk about, which I liked, and it said, the quote was, talking about timeless design versus staying on the edge. And they said, what is now and next isn't what's forever. Like if you design for what's now or what's coming next, it will never be the thing that's forever. And the designs that stand the test of time are the things that don't try to make 3D buttons and whatever, because we always end up editing ourselves and getting it down, paring it down and paring it down. And then you get it right. And you look at some iconic things like they showed like the Eames chair that they've had that's been the same, or a lot of those products that Dieter Rams did for Braun.
Yeah.
You looked at that Braun alarm clock when you woke up. That thing was made in like the 60s, but it's still totally relevant today. You could have that in your house and people would think, oh, that's cool. Where'd you get that? IKEA or something? Yeah. So, if you're always trying to chase what's next, you're never really going to get a timeless design. And so if you want something that stands the test of time, you really shouldn't chase that. And then the thing about that when they said that, they were showing a shot of Target, and they were talking about how Target has really democratized design. And here's what I thought. I'm going to open this up, and it's a guess. We've all shopped at Target before, yes? Okay, think of the Target price tag in your head. When you go look at a price tag at Target, what does it look like?
White with that red bullseye.
No red bullseye. White is correct. Okay, the Target price tag has been the same as long as I've been alive. Let me see if I can find a picture. Okay.
Profit.
Yeah. Without the price cut part, that has been the Target price tag for as long as I've been alive. And actually, if I can find a better picture, the Target shelf, it has a slightly slanted shelf. Where is it? They had the picture of it. Yeah. That's been the Target price tag as long as I can remember. They've never changed it. It's just always been that sort of thing. And I just thought that was interesting. I just saw it in the background. They're walking through Target, and I went, they've never changed that price tag. I remember that from when I was like 5 and I went to Target. That's what the price was. That's how they displayed the price. And it's one of those, and there's nothing to it. It's typography, which I think will be interesting for next month. It's all about typography and weighting of the important stuff. I think if I can get Target, the one I'm looking at is store shelf. Google will save me here. Anyway, I thought this was interesting when I watched it. And so it's a kind of an example of timeless design. And I can't
But that isn't specific to Target. That would be the designer that made the shelves.
Oh, this is the one I'm thinking of. The designer that made that's Costco. Look at that. I knew that was Costco. By just saying That's impressive, right? Yeah. And you knew that was Costco too. I'm talking about the tag itself. It's just that they have this I can't find the picture of it, but Target has this lean back shelf thing that was a tag. Anyway. It's just interesting that this part of the white part of the tag has been basically the same, near as I can remember, for as long as I've been alive. And as soon as they showed the shot of Target and the guy walking through Target, that's what caught my eye. I went, oh yeah, Target price tag. I know exactly where to look. I know how much it costs. I know where to look for I know what I'm looking at. It was just very interesting. And I guess Costco does a pretty good job because I clicked on that and knew it was Costco price tag right away. So there you go.
It's funny you just mentioned what you just said about it looks the same all the time. Palomar Medical Center in Escondido. They designed each hospital room to be exactly the same laid out. There's never a mirror image. So in an emergency, a nurse knows oxygen's on one side, bathrooms on the other, or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and that was very intentional.
Yeah.
Design.
Yeah.
I think there is,
based on users, based on what the users, the humans,
the psychology
would have to.
I've read a fair number of studies on grocery store layout, and it's very interesting. And you can go to grocery stores across the country and see very similar design principles about where the fresh food is, where the bakery is. So much so that I get angry when I walk into a store that has the things in the wrong place. And I went to go get the bread, and the friggin' wine wasn't right next to the bread. It's supposed to be over by the and so there's a bunch of human psychology that goes into it of what is the first thing you see when you walk into a grocery store? It's not the toilet paper. It's not the toilet brush. It's not even the meat. It's the fresh fruit and vegetables and the fresh baked bread. And that's the first thing I want you to see and want you to smell. And now you're like, I'm in a store. This is great. I want some fresh bread. The last thing you see is going to be the detergent and the candy for the kids. That's why it's on the bottom, right? The candy, the cereal for the kids is on the lower shelves. There's lots of intentional design there that I think is very interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing about timeless design that I thought was very good, they were talking about this more in the sense of products that last. The guy was specifically talking about the briefcase that he had from his dad, the leather briefcase that just gets better with age. And so he said we should start thinking about this concept of wearing in instead of wearing out. Like things shouldn't wear out, they should wear in, and they should get better with age and better with use. And can you build an iterative design, or you can build something? So some of that can be the basic to advanced. Can I have a way to get better and better with this software? I've exceeded the basic, can I switch the advanced mode and it's just additive? And this product is now getting more enjoyable to use as time goes on.
Use a letter opener from the late 1800s.
There you go. There you go. Letter opener.
Love it.
There is a big movement, right, to use classic things. There's this whole maker movement, make things by hand, do all these things by hand. I want to get the classic tools. I want to get the classic things. Like that is relevant today. You know, how much it ties to this, I don't know.
You
But
mentioned briefcase, though. I mean, I had a briefcase with IBM in the 80s and all that, but I mean, I love just having a backpack and you know, taking the weight off the arms or whatever. I
Mhm.
mean, I don't know.
yeah.
So I think it's a better design and it's functional for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if anyone carries a laptop in a briefcase.
Sure, it happens.
Probably. I mean, mine's over there. It's a shoulder strap, but it's like a leather messenger bag. It's a messenger bag.
Like, you know, here.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine has a little handle on it. I never carry it that way. Just
Yeah.
because the shoulder's easier, because I need my
Right.
hands free to play with my phone, which you didn't need in the 80s, right? You didn't need your hands free to mess with your cell phones.
Right.
There you go.
Oh, this briefcase is just taking my mind off my hands. And I
Yeah.
can walk.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all
There you go.
designed that way.
There was one other. I have a handful of other quotes. I'm just kind of
Still in
looking.
the movie?
Yeah. This is probably the last one in the movie. There was. I forget exactly what they were talking about, but he. I don't have a pen here. He picked up a pen and he was talking about. I think it was the Japanese designer, and he was talking about like the design of pens and how you hold a pen. And he's like, look at this and look at this, and then he stopped and he went, well, actually, when you just stop thinking about it, it's the most natural way to hold a pen. Like you overthink the thing and you think, how am I supposed to, how is this, how should I, and then you just shut up and just hold the thing and you go, oh yeah, that's the most natural way to do this. And so it was this kind of the concept of you have to step back and step away and just say, well, wait a minute, what's the most obvious way to do this? And I thought that was kind of interesting, the way that he kind of showed that off, that we can tend to over design, right? We tend to overthink. He was saying we can tend to overthink the problem. And maybe the simplest thing is just the most natural thing. Just walk up to the problem and say, yep, that's the answer. And don't second guess yourself.
So you think gold plating is a temptation for software development?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Designers too, right? Designers, somebody mentioned that designers tend to show off, or they tend to like want to really put everything in there. Like even Scotty said, this page maybe is over designed, right? Like let's put everything we can. Let's put 5 different fonts. Let's put little call outs. Let's put like animations that open. Let's like, maybe that's too much. Let's put an image with a rounded circle and subtext, and maybe that's over designed. I don't know.
I also wonder what made the movie producers choose those particular designers for those different countries. What was the idea behind it?
Yeah, I mean, a handful of them were incredibly famous. I mean, Dieter Rams and Johnny Ives and Bill Moorage and, the guys from IDEO. They spent a lot of time at IDEO. These are like, if you're looking at design, these are the pinnacle of the industry. These guys have designed probably everything you've interacted with in the last 25 years, quite literally. The Dutch person, I'm not sure. The furniture design and the Museum of Modern Art New York couple or London couple, they made some really, that robot that you looked into, and yeah, those people maybe not, but
you make that emotional connection with it, holding it like a baby.
Poor examples to go off.
Well, their point was, when it was the interesting part of that segment was that was a little bit older. The movie's a little bit older, and they were talking about robotics and automation, which is a very now topic. And they were trying to say, like, you interact with these devices and these robots, and what do robots look like in your house? Well, robots look like 3 things in my house: a cell phone, a vacuum cleaner, and a lady in a tube, the Alexa lady in the tube. Yeah. Those are the 3 robots in my house, right? They look kind of technological, but my daughter, who's 2, when we leave the house, she says goodbye to my mom, to my wife, to the dog, and to the vacuum cleaner. So she knows the robot drives around. The robot's called Sucky, and she says, "Bye, Sucky." And that's so she has an emotional connection with.
Is he a Roomba?
No, he's not a Roomba. He's I don't know, whatever. I forget what the other brand is called, but anyway, she says bye to the robot vacuum, so she's making a connection.
Side note. Yeah, connecting with robots. They're having bomb disposal robots in the Army.
Oh yeah.
Did you hear about this? and they were getting blown up on the test ranges, and they found that operators did not want to leave the robot behind.
No man
So
left
they'd be like,
behind.
no, I can't leave the robot behind because this leg got blown off. I gotta save
Wow.
it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Very cool. Any other? I mean, I'm just going through my notes. Anybody else have
Okay.
feedback on the movie? Anything else? I like the car section a lot too. They interviewed the head designer of BMW, Bangle. I thought the car section was brilliant, and he said like cars are the most widely industrial design product on the planet. And, like, you know, that everyone
Right.
and they're so widely different. And when you get inside a car, you're showing off something about yourself and to other people. But the reality is, no one cares on the freeway. You're actually kind of internalizing for yourself what it is that you're like, and your car says so much about you. A car has a face on the front and a face on the back, and the best part of the thing is he said that a car is a hunk of metal that's frozen in time, and they need to make that hunk of metal view as if it's in motion. When you look at the car, when you walk around the car, does it look like it's in motion? So, you know, so the guy, specifically the Bangle guy at BMW, he's famous for ruining the BMW, because when he took over, he made the Bangle butt, which is the modern BMW, has a kind of like shark wave thing to it. So that older BMWs used to be kind of squared off, you know, like the 90s, and, you know, that style was a squared off thing. And he made like a swooping curve, and it had like a little shark rear end look to it. And it, because it felt like it was in motion. You know, I thought that was a pretty interesting thing to think about.
He made a great point about, was it the Chinese Army general? I think that was the movie.
Oh, in the very beginning, the
With the
bows
arrows.
and the arrows.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the very
Standardized.
beginning. She said that was the goal of industrial design, is mass production. Is that the earliest example is the Chinese emperor, because the guy died and you couldn't take the arrows out of his quiver. They wouldn't work with your bow because they were custom built.
Really interesting.
Yeah, very cool. Cool.
I had some thoughts on the next one, transitioning.
Okay. So that's Objectified. If you haven't watched it, highly recommend it. It's about 2 hours. You can find it on YouTube.
Hour and a half.
So how design work is this guy.
Yeah,
This is the whole page.
Yeah.
And a lot of this on this page actually covers what's in Objectified. Right? They even mention Objectified, and they
Right,
talk a lot about Dieter Ram's. I think this is important. Dieter Ram's 10 principles to design is important and stuff. So
Things to keep in mind.
So not this one. You said the next
The
one.
transition one. I thought there were
yeah.
some good points in here. One that I think is really important is trying to tackle the entire universe of design at once will set you up for failure, because it's broad. And but the good news, I think, is what you need in order to achieve all these things we talked about in the beginning is much smaller, right? So you don't have to become an expert in typography to improve your user interfaces in your web applications. But you do have to learn typography. You have to create fonts, choose typefaces, choose style, all these things intentionally. And you just need to know some in order to be able to do that. And you could certainly push your skills further and further and further and become someone who has their own unique design voice or something. But it didn't sound like that's really what people are interested in. And so to get to that level, you don't need the entire universe of design. You just need to start digging in. And so I think that's an important message, is don't feel like you have to know all that before you can achieve what you're trying to achieve. Some other things I like to, the best designers I know are amazing listeners, I think is a good quote. And we're going to keep cycling back to the same idea. It's because we're having to start empathizing. We're starting to have to think about the people who are experiencing the things we create. And that means we have to listen to them.
Well, isn't the best designer or a product designer or software developer one who knows what the pain point is of the client, of the customer, right? And we need to address that pain point.
Yeah, that's the empathy, right? You know, if they feel that pain themselves, even better, because that's easier to empathize if you're experiencing it also. Yeah.
As opposed to the CEO and the executives are not feeling the pain directly.
Right. Or the AWS engineer who doesn't use their own cloud interface.
Yeah, who uses Azure. Also, your job is to solve problems. Always know what problems you're trying to solve while in the process of designing. I mean, we keep getting back to the same points, but you know that's because that's is really the foundation of everything we're trying to do here. Yeah. Anything else?
Oh, that's good.
Anything to add to that?
No, on that one, that's good. Okay, so yeah, we're not unhappy we're designers. That's just this quote, right? But it's the end of it, like basically is a great, explain that you'd be happier if the world didn't need so much improving. That's the thing I noticed, like before I took design seriously, this is, I don't know, it's 8 years ago or something, when I just was a coder and just didn't care about it. And I was like, oh, I can't do design. I'll just throw some buttons on whatever. And then when design became more relevant, I started reading a bunch of books about it. And that's the thing I started noticing, is that not angry or just disappointed. And I started noticing more things that were poorly designed. I think a lot of times we have this mental block or this bias that we just kind of deal with something. You go home and you'll just deal with it, and you're just like, oh, whatever. And it's just a minor annoyance, but it's just every time I pick this thing up, every time I click this button, every time I do this, it just doesn't work, and it drives me crazy. And then when you start to empathize with users in your own design, you start to recognize that, and you just get frustrated. Like, this person did not think about this, or they did think about it and they were wrong. The answer was wrong. Like they designed this intentionally, but they were wrong. I do have some things on this one, the Complete Beginner's Guide. I thought this was very good. And my notes here, they kind of just, they talk about goal-driven design, but they talk about the different areas. Wait, let me make sure this is the right section that has the different areas of what is interaction design. Yeah. And they try to explain what is it interaction design, and they talk about different terminology. And this is where we mentioned the inmates are running the asylum, which is here, I think, which is Alan Cooper's book. So these are all kind of books we recommend if you haven't got them. And why high-tech products drive us crazy and how to restore the sanity. It's a pretty good book about, what the interaction design is. And then we talk about the human-computer interaction book breaks down what the 3 principles of usability are, and then they come back and say, then they expand to 5, and then the ISO standard expands to 5 principles, and you can see the overlap in what does it mean to have good usability. What makes the software usable? Well, it's learnability, it's flexibility, it's efficiency, it's robustness, and you can kind of figure out which of these makes sense. But I think this is a good starting point of, like, if I want to say, is this thing usable? Does it answer these questions? How learnable is it? How flexible is it? And flexible is, to your point, how many ways can the user interact with the system? And the answer to that is, back to Einstein's quote, it needs to be as flexible and no more and no less, really, right? Like, if you go and you say, this is the advanced settings screen, and it's just ungodly, and you just, no one would ever need 50 billion settings, then maybe that's too flexible, right? There's a point at which that can be too flexible. And so then the next thing I like, the 5 dimensions. So they mentioned this book here called Designing Interactions. And this is huge. And I'll be honest, I have not read every single page of this, but you can pick it up and just read a little at a time, because it's a series of interviews with famous designers and specific around projects that they did. And in this, one of the interviews, they talk about the 5 dimensions of design. The first dimension being words. So we're going to jump into that next month. Typography. Words mean something. How you shape the words, how you phrase the message, what you say and how you say it, how succinct you are. The second dimension is the visual representation. These are all the graphics and the imagery and the iconography that you use in your system. The third dimension is the physical objects and any of the physical hardware. So is it on a mobile? Is it on a computer screen? Is it on a touch kiosk? Is it, 4D, the fourth dimension would be time, the length of time they spend to accomplish their task, or they spend interacting with that device or that interface. And then a fifth dimension was added later outside of this book in another book called What Puts the Design in Interaction Design. And the fifth dimension is behavior. And it really comes down to the emotions and the reaction that the user has when interacting with that. So that kind of ties into this next book I have, which is very good and more readable. And it's called Designing for Emotion from the Book Apart series. So I really like this book, and it kind of covers that fifth dimension. So you think about, did I hit all those first 4 dimensions, and the user got into my system, they understood what I was trying to say, they saw the iconography, they clicked on the thing on their phone, and they got the transaction done. But you never really gauged how they felt about that. Were they excited? Were they happy? Are they going to come back and patronize your site again? Are they going to buy another product from you? Or are they going to, whatever it is that you do? So I think this book is very good about doing that, and start focusing on, like, what are the emotional responses that humans have when they interact with these devices and when they interact with the things. especially in the social media world. They talk a lot about social media in this book and like how that impacts the emotions that people have and the vile behavior that happens on social media, basically. And then the bottom section here was pretty good. I think just luminaries in the industry per se, people to follow. So Alan Cooper is there, and they just kind of mentioned here's other people that you might be interested in following. I actually don't follow any of these people on Twitter, mainly because I clicked and read their Twitter feeds, and some of them were just filled with stuff I didn't want to read. So, but I think it's pretty good. This guy is an editor at A List Apart, which is the Book Apart series that does designing for emotion. And Dan Safer, this guy got a book called Designing for Interaction, which is one of the first books that I saw that was out on touch interfaces. So he tried to write, if you're doing mobile or if you're doing any kind of touch interface, he wrote this Designing for Interaction book that was really good about trying to get a standard around what gestures mean. Like, pinch to zoom is one of those ones that, like, of course, how else would it work? Apple kind of came up with that, really, right? They popularized it. How else would that work? But nobody really has standards around that. So he wrote this book, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or something to try to solidify that. So if you're doing touch interaction, or I think the book is still relevant when we talk about augmented reality and virtual reality and gesture interface, like the Kinect. When you look at what Microsoft Kinect does and how you interact with your hands and motions and movements and how you signify things to a machine, I think it's even more interesting there. He has a lot of good stuff there. So, and I have that book, but I think it's at home. So, yeah, and then talk a little bit about the tools. Balsamiq, I think, is still relevant. I think people still use Balsamiq. It's a pretty cool sketch tool. We've used it here for sure. Just a quick way to sketch interfaces, and it accomplishes this goal that Microsoft had a product a while back called well, they just had, I guess, squiggly styles inside Blend, like a sketch product that tried to do this. What's that?
Sketchflow, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was it called Sketchflow? Is that right?
Yeah, Sketchflow.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so and the
Comic Sans.
yeah, the idea was that it's purposefully poorly designed in a sense. It's purposefully like whimsical, and it would never actually look like this. So a lot of effort, a lot of design went into getting this to look right so that people didn't think it was a real piece of software. When you show them a prototype, they go, "Oh, great, so you're done. It'll just be done next week." And you're like, "No, dude." So a lot of effort went into getting that right. And so Balsamiq does a good job. Sketchflow is no longer a product, but they do the same thing. And Adobe has a product too, right, that does this.
Well, not, you mean experience design, but not
XD.
You'd have to use some sort of sketchy. Yeah. But the problem is also with a high fidelity version,
right,
is they'll get caught up in, well, I don't really love this blue.
Right.
And at this stage, you're just worried about,
I don't care what
does it make
color
sense that the user goes here and then goes here? So that plays into it with selling the design. I think it was
this approach of low fidelity designs works very well for us in any of the software we do. Low fidelity designs are a requirement for the initial stages. Otherwise, users, like Greg said, they can't get past that block.
Lots of times we just do it on paper. Paper prototyping is a really great way, because then it's super fast and you can revise it quickly, and you can step through the pages even though it's not a computer, and it's clear that it's not a piece of software. It's not distracting them with what color blue you chose.
The one nice thing about non-paper versions of low fidelity is if you can do it on the target device, like a phone. And XD does a little bit of this, I think, and you can see some of the basic interactions for screen transitions. You can see how people might interact. Envision I've never used before, so I'm not sure on that one. I've worked with OmniGraffle. It's still out there. I don't know if it's still like super relevant, but it's a Mac only product. So if you're a Mac person, it's a quick kind of visual designer sketching thing. Lets you do curves and stuff. So it's a kind of medium fidelity. It's not super low fidelity like Balsamiq would be, but it's definitely not a completed product. And I haven't used Patternry either, so I'm not sure of that. And then Sketch, I've used a little bit. This tends to be much higher fidelity. It's also Mac only. A lot of these tools end up being Mac only, so kind of a bummer.
So get a Mac.
Yeah, get a Mac. That's lesson 2, buy a Mac. And then there's associations in here. And actually, I think this is, Meetup. Is this where I saw it? Maybe not. I saw the one you just texted me about to go to Creative Mornings. That was in here somewhere. It was either here or on the next page. So anyway, there was something on here I wanted to mention. There's a thing called Creative Mornings, and it's it's a like worldwide group, and they have chapters everywhere. And it was just kind of interesting. It was mentioned in one of the things. I had never heard of it. And so you can join it. The meetings are free. They happen all over the world. Free coffee and donuts. They do one in San Diego. It's once a month. It's Friday morning early, and in downtown. And they have a different topic every month, and all the groups around the world have the same topic, but the actual talk is totally up to the presenter. Like, so this month's topic is taboo, I think. But you don't know what that means. It's just whatever they're going to do. So it seems to draw the creative crowd. Anyway, so if you live in downtown or you want to go Friday morning once a month in downtown, this seemed like a pretty interesting. And I think registration.
It's at the central library in the top floor, which is that really beautiful room they have up there.
Yeah. So I think registration for this month's one just opened, and I think it sells out pretty quickly. So, or it sells free. Out, it's free, but like it fills out pretty quickly, right? At least that's what you were saying. Oh, I was right there and I wasn't looking. Yeah. So, and the guy who organizes this, Nate Spies, he's the CEO of Grizzly, which is like a pretty well-regarded design firm in downtown. They've won a bunch of awards and stuff. So, but it seems to have a good crowd, and they record the meetings. It looks like, so you can watch the previous ones even if you don't make it down. So, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And then there's a mention of books. Again, designing. So here's the Design of Everyday Things is another book, Don Norman, that we would recommend. This one down here.
Good one.
And
it's designed for standing.
Yeah, there you go. And then here's the Human-Computer Interaction book. And then this is another book by the guy who did the Gestural Interfaces book, Dan Safer, up here. I have not read this book, but I liked his other book, so probably pretty good.
There was one, I think it was on here somewhere on this page, that I thought was important to keep in mind. Having an interaction designer who can champion the end user without worrying about the technical constraints. And I think as software developers who are trying to be the designers, that's one of our biggest obstacles and in some ways, you can never quite get away from it if you're playing both those roles. And what I find is I'm much more effective when I can just play one of the roles. Otherwise, I'm thinking too much about how to build this thing, and that's driving the design. And so it's a trap. You fall into it. If you're the software developer trying to design, you're always going to be thinking about, well, it's in this language, and I have these components, and I know how to do this, and I know how to do that.
Right.
And to just pretend that doesn't exist and say, well, what if I didn't know any of that? What might I come up with? And so that's just going to be a challenge throughout as you deal with this. But you're going to have to find a way to separate yourself. It's almost like you have to put yourself into these two modes and be creative designer in one sense, and then switch over to the developer when it's time to build it.
Well, it's an interesting term. They said design technologist.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like you said, it's kind of trying to combine. And there was one video on one of these links, and it was actually a designer saying, hey, us designers, it was at a design conference, so it's more artsy type, people, and they're saying we need to get more technical skills. So they're coming from the other angle, and we're coming.
Yeah, that's
they
true.
will meet in the middle.
Yeah. There was so when Microsoft released WPF many years ago, it was like a big shift in UI design for desktop. They enabled you to do a lot of things you couldn't do before. And they started building tools, Blend and Sketchflow and these sorts of tools that were meant to be usable by the developer, but to create beautiful designs, because we were shifting into a world where the interfaces for desktop products had to be totally different. And for a long time there, they were coining terms back and forth between diviner and developer. It was like developer designer or designer developer. They tried diviner for a long time. I preferred developer because it sounded like an animal, a wild animal.
Be a zealoter.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, like I said, it's one of those things that I'm so bummed out about when I interview people and they say like, oh, I just can't do UI. And at this day and age, I just feel like, man, you have to be able to do it. I mean, Ike always says from his world, he's a data guy primarily, but he's also a very good developer. And he says most of the database guys who just say, well, I'm just a data guy, are just dying out. Like they're just not able to be competitive in the market anymore, because the data guys have to know how to do programming and have to know how to work in the cloud. And you have to have more skill sets than that. And I feel like the software developer who says, I can't do UI, is going to be something that's just going to be less and less relevant. It's just not competitive. You're just not as competitive as an engineer. So, okay, cool.
Okay.
And then the last one was just, beautiful web fonts. We'll get more into this with the typography section, kind of leads into it. And this was one thing you may not have noticed. This is all just kind of like test text, so you can see what the font looks like. But if you want to know what it is, you just click on the font and it goes to the.
Have read all that.
No, and it goes to the Google Web font where you. You laugh, but I've definitely had that feedback before. Like, what is this? It looks like the fonts, like somebody has typos here. And I'm like, that's lorem ipsum. Never mind. We'll just move on. But you can just click on them and go to the fonts. So it's pretty good. So if you don't know about Google Fonts, I think my two favorites were, I really like this one just because it looked just like a newspaper. And then I liked this one here. Simple, I guess.
And these are like open, you can use them.
Open fonts, yeah. So Google Fonts is really great. You can search. They have a really nice interface for searching, and they let you do. Let's see if I go back here. They let you do.
You can just try your own text.
There was.
So you can see if you have something you're going to write, like your name or whatever. You can see what it looks like in that font, and then you can tweak like the settings here to see what it looks like for all the different font faces and stuff.
So doesn't this go directly against what the woman was saying in the video, how you should pay the people that do the typography?
Oh, yeah.
Because like she spent like half an hour ranting about how they don't get paid for all the like hardware things.
Yes. So there's another movie, and the I believe that one of the typography lessons for next month will touch on this. I don't know that they say to watch it, but it's like maybe you should watch it. It's called Helvetica. It's another documentary purely on typography. Also brilliant, but a bit more nerdy. And it's one of those movies where you'll watch it and you'll get angry with the world because you'll realize that like certain signs are not in Helvetica and they should be. And now I can't read that stupid street sign because you came up with your clever little font. But it does talk about people who actually design fonts, which is like this whole crazy other space. But Google Fonts is a great resource to have just tons and tons of free fonts, and you can download them in all different formats and free and open to use. Ship them in your mobile, embed them in your app. We embed these in WPF apps a lot, all kinds of stuff. Put them on the web, use them on the web all the time. So we're going to get more into typography. There's a couple more books we're going to bring in specific to typography. That's going to be like way down in the weeds, but it's an interesting thing to learn. So. Yes, question. Hang on one second. And then you.
On the tool screen, you skipped over Envision because you hadn't used it.
Yeah.
It has this really awesome feature in beta right now where you
Okay.
can click on an element on a design, if you will, and
Uh-huh.
it tells you what font it is, how many pixels it is, what color the background is. It's like such a lifesaver communicating with your designer, provided they do the same like heading and everything on every design.
So this lets you click on what, Photoshop files and do that?
I don't know what
Or images.
into it, 'cause I never uploaded things.
I think that's what we're doing is Photoshop.
But somehow it parses through things and figures out the font and the colors and everything for every element that you can click on. It tells you about the padding sometimes, how far away they are from the edge.
Cool.
I
Cool.
don't know if it's free or not.
And the question is, is it just an online tool?
Yeah.
Oh, try inspect for free. I see. I see.
Photoshop has that capability as well. If you get design in Photoshop.
Yep.
Yeah. But as another tool that it'll actually give you CSS based on.
And there are extensions for Chrome that do a lot of this too. If it's a web page, if you're looking at a web page, you can do color dropper picker and font picker, and a lot of that deconstruction of a page can be done. But yeah, this is cool. Yeah, I've never used it before. I don't see anything about
the fake interactions too.
Oh, it does.
It lets you do prototypes with hotspots.
Yeah.
So you guys use this at your company?
I use it at 2 companies.
Cool. All right.
Is that Hunter too?
Oh yeah.
Nice.
So I don't. This is interesting from a design perspective. As an end customer, I don't see how to buy this. I see sign up for free. I can win a free T-shirt. Thank you. I don't want that. I just see sign up for free. I guess that's what they want me to see. Absolutely free. Interesting. The world's leading prototyping, collaboration, and workflow platform. All right. If you have to ask, the price is too expensive. Yeah, probably. As soon as my reaction is I saw the word enterprise and I thought, oh, this is expensive.
Yeah.
This is absolutely expensive.
Oh.
If it's targeted to the enterprise, this is $50,000.
That says Uber, Shopify, Evernote. You see all those.
Yeah,
custom-
expensive.
Yeah.
Expensive. Cool. Okay.
Okay.
So just about on time. We want to try to wrap up around 8. So we've got one more section. So yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, I wanted to expand about your conversation, your ideas conversation about the current developer cannot be just focused on the back end. And I think this might be obvious for many people, but maybe some people don't go to the mental thinking about it. But I think there are two different opposing ways of looking at software development. Some companies will have just front-end developers, and then they basically make all the design, and then they have to shove this to the back-end developers to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm more of the side that I'm a back-end developer who had to learn how to do front-end development.
Mm-hmm.
And in all my apps, the back-end creates all the front-end.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that in mind, I spent now almost 2 years refactoring most of my programs to create an intermediate layer between the database engine and the business layer and the front end. So almost nothing is created directly, like a context bar. I don't create a context bar every place. I call an object to make the context bar so that when the fashion change, the fonts change, the style change, whatever change, I just have to change that intermediate layer and it applies consistently across all the pages.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a trend in most UI design languages that we separate the presentation from the code. Like in HTML, we have CSS and we have HTML and potentially JavaScript, and in WPF we have XAML.
Developers that still create the CSS line by line, and they do it on every single page.
Sure.
Instead of creating an intermediate layer.
Right.
Yep. Yep. And I think that goes to Jason's point too of what his question was, is he's always kind of driven his software design from the back end, and how do we switch and say, let's design it from the user perspective first, and know that there's two potentially opposing ways to look at this problem, what I want to do from an interface perspective and what the code should do architecturally. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so the last thing we want to talk about is
did you want to talk about projects, things in the world that don't?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
sure.
So especially in that we're not unhappy, we're designers, which was talking about, nothing works right. And there's this key, which is always questioning about things. And so I think it's an interesting exercise to always be looking at something and saying, why is it done this way and how do we improve it? And so I wanted to see if anyone had things that exist in your lives, in your world right now, that frustrate you, that don't work the way you want them to. And we can chat about why or what those are.
TV remote controls.
TV remote controls, okay.
or setting up the clock on a microwave oven. I don't know about you, but
yeah,
you can program anything, but when it's time to change the clock on the microwave.
And why?
TV remote control, that's interesting.
It's because I think they overload sometimes the button. One button, there's too many things depending on which sequence you press them.
Right.
And I know for many programmers, we have the keyboard. We have all the keys there, so we don't have to overload the same thing. That's one thing that drives me nuts about Mac. When it's one button, yes, one button, cool. But then double click, click, whatever pattern you click on it, where you're recreating complexity even though you supposedly reduced by one button.
Right.
So in many remote controls, many of these appliances, they try to simplify sometimes so much that there is not a single button that says set time.
Right. It's very, the remote control is interesting.
Cognitive friction, cognitive friction, which is that, if there's a single button to do something, then it's just easy, what it's going to do. But as soon as that button can be in different states and you have to remember, well, was I in this state and did I do this first and do it second? Right. It builds up all this friction, this cognitive friction.
Yes.
That makes it hard to use. And this book actually, Inmates Running the Asylum, talks a lot about microwaves because they are built by the engineers who had these pieces, who had these parts, who had these, capabilities, and built the microwave oven based on that and not based on the user. So how would you fix it? What would you do differently on your microwave to set the clock? Dial. I like that. Yeah. One dial. Yeah, that's my clock.
Set it for an app.
That's a great idea.
Do you do something with your thermostat? I mean, in some of the places I had, the thermostat has so many settings it could be confusing.
Yeah.
I purposely rip it off and put a plain old one.
Yeah.
Here you go. Clearly, you press these two and then up and down to set the clock, right? Because you turn on the hot pot and you burn the house down. And then,
Right.
That's obvious, right? Obvious. There is one that has a dial, though. I saw this one. It
Yeah.
says clock button and then adjust with a dial.
As opposed to, I was just test driving another car on Friday, and like the clock was off by 1 hour because of daylight saving time. So while I'm driving, I'm just pressing the hour, resetting it, or pressing the minute if I hear that on the radio, it's off by 3 minutes, or I press that, I got it perfect. And it's so easy, versus the microwaves.
Right.
So
Okay,
microwaves, like, why do microwaves have clocks on them? Right, like remove the clock, right?
Yeah.
Don't you have a clock or a
Right.
watch or
Right.
There you go.
Alexa
Even
tell
a
me
better
the time?
question the assumption. Why does it even have?
Why does
It's
it have
got
a
the
clock?
numbers there, why not use it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what happened, right? That's
Uh-huh.
what happened.
Okay, you got
Because we could.
check this
Right,
out. I
right.
gotta get the
Might not
right.
be-
I gotta get the right picture. Okay, so I rented one of these, a Chrysler 300. Okay, and I was driving these, and this was the biggest industrial design fail I'd ever seen in my life. So where is the gear shifter?
So that silver.
Yeah.
What?
So where is the radio button that looks exactly like that? Right there.
Turn the volume down. Go into
Yeah.
reverse.
Yes. I did it. I was driving and like I turned the wrong knob. Because it's just a knob. I'm like, oh, and I had seen ones that have radio controls down here, and I've never seen a gear shifter as a knob. And so I'm just driving, and I went like that to change the station, and I was like, oh, good God, thank God! It like went into like it went into like neutral or whatever. I was like, holy sh! And then I couldn't. I've never changed the radio from that point on. I was like, this is the worst design. Like,
I've never listened to
What?
the radio.
it's like I'm okay if it's here, but it can't be a dial. It's got to be a stick, right?
Yeah,
like. Or if it's a dial, don't put it so close to
Right.
this with the same hand. Like, oh man, it was horrible. It was frightening.
Yeah, many cards.
So
Yeah, it was really bad.
when the iPhone came out with the hard touch, like, you could do a context menu.
The force press. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like this is just so. So you used to be able to move your icons, right? But one's a hard press and one's a soft press. But I can never get it
Mm.
right. So right now, everything that I do to remove an app,
You pressed your delicate. Now move it.
there we go.
Gentle.
So,
See,
it's totally
you just
unintrusive.
beast mode your
Breathe
phone.
deep,
You
yeah.
gotta slow down.
And there's so much
Okay.
anger in my life and deep resentment toward Apple. that these
Well, there's
guys
a good,
have
and there's another,
You'd be happier if so many things didn't have to be
Yeah.
fixed in the world.
and there's another example, which is the key fob that's got the unlock door,
Sure.
and then right next to it is a button for
lost.
panic mode where
Yeah.
everybody looks
Mhm.
at you and you're like, and the only way to turn
that's
off
what-
is open the
I think
car.
that's what my keys have.
And
Yeah, lock and panic are right on
Right.
top of each other. I've hit panic so many times.
Pop the trunk and panic. So it's like, oh no, I'm panicking. Throw me in the trunk.
Panic is in red though,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It is in red.
It is
Totally
red. So
intuitive.
one
when
of
you
them I
reach in your
had.
pocket,
I know.
you feel the red with your thumbs.
Yeah, right.
Which one? One of them I had. I think it was my last car, the car before it. It was a Subaru, and the key fob had the panic on the back. It wasn't even on the face. So like this motion was lock, unlock, but if you squeezed it with your finger in the back,
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah.
But a place where that works. So do you have the new iPhone? The brand, the fingerprint. It has a fingerprint scanner,
Oh,
on it,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Which is the home button.
Yeah.
So my wife has that, and I don't like it because the only finger I can use is my thumb. But mine, it's on the back. So like it just seems when it's in my hand, my finger naturally goes there, and it's just super quick to like go and unlock my phone. And I don't feel I'm not like that was
That
too
seems
much
like
balance.
A patent thing though.
Yeah.
I don't
You're
think.
like, we can't put it on the
no, I
front.
don't.
So yeah, just put it on the back. We're done, right?
Oh,
That's
yeah,
like-
yeah.
That's a patent.
Well, but they could
But
have.
it worked out better, probably.
It does, although I do find myself putting my finger right over the camera lens and getting finger smudges on my camera lens, so I have to like wipe that off. But I thought that was really nicely designed, and it's really slick. Like it's just so much faster for me to do it. So.
Does anyone here have the Roku?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's the world's worst remote, right?
You don't like it?
It's horrible.
Wait, the physical remote, the
The newest one, yeah.
yeah.
It's hard to tell which one it is.
This thing here.
I hate.
I have two of them. I have this. I have the stick and I have the box. They have the same remote except for these fast press buttons. Oh, do you have the touch remote? Like the brand
The
new?
very second picture, right next to
This thing?
yeah. So it's got like Showtime, Netflix.
Oh yeah.
And right above play is like search, and it knocks you out or whatever you do.
Mm-hmm.
So careful with it.
You know, do you have the remote on your phone? Install the app on your phone. It works a little bit better, I think.
Oh, okay.
So I have the Roku remote on my phone. I don't know if I can actually get to it because I have to connect to a Roku port.
So how would you fix that remote if you could?
Well, I'd make it more like a lot of other remotes are, so that the play button, maybe you can kind of feel that it's a triangle, so you
What is it? Right.
Let me see if I can
They're
get
all
a
the same
better
shape, I think.
picture. Yeah, they're all the same shape.
So look up Roku 2 remote.
Okay, Roku 2 remote.
And there's like 4 rows of buttons. You can't even tell which one you're on.
This is like a terrible image, I think.
Pinch to zoom. Pinch to zoom.
This doesn't work. Okay, control. Is it control?
So which is the?
That's play. Those are circular.
It's the same exact shape
Almost
as
way
every.
better than mine.
Oh, really?
Mine has two rows that have 3 each.
Uh-huh.
And another 2 rows.
Yeah.
It's just really difficult to tell.
Right. Okay. Anyone else? Products, things that drive them crazy?
Software
don't
that you
work?
hate, products that you hate.
I have one that bugs me all the time, which is gas station pumps, gas pumps,
Oh, yeah.
because you put your credit card in and then you type on the keypad and then it asks you a question but the keypad doesn't answer the question. You have to go to this other pad, which is like soft, like flat pads to answer the questions. And then it says, now choose your grade. And none of these do it. You have to find this other set of buttons down here. And I just always feel like, why are there so many buttons? It's like each thing got added.
We're asking more now too, like, oh, are you a bond member? Dude, who cares?
Oh yeah.
Like,
Do you want a car wash?
No.
This is why you have to move to Oregon, where they'll pump your gas for you, and they'll yell at you if you get out of your car to pump your gas. So bring back the jobs. Someone should pump my gas for me. Then I don't have to press all of these screens in all. Here you go. Here's a good one. Look,
Yeah.
buttons on top of buttons on top of buttons.
Yeah. 3 different sets of buttons.
You know what I have like though, because the flat press buttons, these buttons are terrible. They don't last.
Yeah.
They're always worn out.
Yeah.
So most are going to the actual old style, like chiclet key press buttons, and those work so much better. They're more durable, and they like those flat press buttons. Like I find myself like punching the stupid thing to get it to get the right number, and then sometimes you barely tap it and it puts like 3 of them in, and you're just like, whatever.
And the plastic over it is all wet and shredded.
Yeah. Anything else?
Anybody?
Just a quick question. When it said IXD for interaction design,
Mhm.
is that exactly the same as UXD?
Mm.
Design, or is there a difference?
I would say there's
a difference. I think. Yeah.
There's a vagueness around all of it,
Yes.
and different people have different opinions about what each thing is. In my view, an interaction designer is focused on more specifically a person interacting directly with the thing at the moment, what's happening on the screen, how am I working my way through this software, and I think of user experience as including that part. Interaction design is part of user experience, but user experience is also thinking about, who is this person? What are they doing? Where are they doing this thing? Okay, they're in their car. So while an interaction designer might be making this really slick thing on your mobile phone, the user experience designer is saying, oh, well, they're driving. So don't have these little, it should be one big thing that you hit your thumb on because you don't want to like look at the screen and, so there's
a broader concept.
I think it's a broader concept.
Interesting,
I think our software will all be improved when we take on a better understanding of user experience design, because that's where I think the empathy of the user comes from. Interaction design, I think, will help us specifically achieve this. I want my web page to look better, and I want a user to enjoy it more usable. But ultimately, I think for us to improve what we're building, we have to step back and take on more of the user experience.
Good.
Do you have different?
No.
We could have totally different.
Yeah, no.
thoughts on
I
it.
was just looking. No, I think that's right. I was just looking at the quote. There was a quote from one of the, I forget which one, but it said it was defining interaction design as they thought it, and they said interaction design is designing the interaction of what's going on behind the screen. And so like they were putting in the context of software, like what I'm designing, like what Greg just said is I'm designing how the human is interacting with my product or my piece of software, like what they click to get to here. So one of the more famous interaction design case studies that is done is an ATM when you go to withdraw money. Right. So the user experience designer is probably going to look at like how the shape of the ATM is when you walk up to it. Can you protect the pin as you're typing it in? Like, is sunlight an issue on the screen? What are your surroundings like? Is it lit well? the interaction designer is going to say, when you're on the screen and you're trying to get $20 out, how long does it take you to get $20 out, right? And Bank of America beats everybody at this, I think. And Chase across the street just installed new ATMs, and they're trying to get better at it because they had some of the worst ATMs in the world of like, nope, I just want $20. How many of these? Nope, I don't want it. It was horrible. And I think it was Frog Design. Had a case study. They redid the flow of Bank of America's ATMs, and they had a metric that said they spent like a year just collecting metrics of what the most common operations were on the ATM. And it may seem obvious now, getting $20 out is the most common. So it wasn't just withdraw cash, type in 20, enter was the better. What was better was quick cash, $20, walk away. 2 button presses, $20, I'm gone. And they said when they did that, the amount of time people spent at the ATM dropped dramatically, and the amount of transactions they did at each ATM skyrocketed, and people were just much happier with the overall experience. And so, next time you go to your bank and walk up with your bank, like if you go to Bank of America, you're probably pretty pleased. They have a really nice ATM. Chase is getting a little bit better, but if you go to like credit unions I've seen are just horrendous. It's like, I would rather go inside and ask the teller for $20, and my life's over at that point. If I have to go in the bank, forget it. I'm just going to be homeless. Like I'm not going to do it. It's horrible. So
People still use cash?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
I wish that's a great thing. I wish contactless pay would get better. I try to use Android Pay everywhere I go. In fact, to the point where I will go to buy some food and they say 20, and I just bang my phone against the cash register. And they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just trying to see if anything you have here takes Android Pay. And if that doesn't work, I will give you my credit card." I did it the other day. It's in your Grubby's, this little taco shop here. And she didn't know. And she was just like, $20. And I just stuck my phone and went bloop. And she's like, "What was that?" And I was like, "Thank you very much." And I walked away, and she's like, "What?" Like she had no idea it did that. She didn't know. And I said, "It was cool. It was Android Pay. I'm done. Like I don't do any. I just touch my phone and my fingerprint's right here. So I just go fingerprint, tap, walk away, done. Easiest way to buy anything. And I wish more people would do it. But okay. Anything else you want to talk about? Okay. So question in the back.
That's touchscreens in cars.
Mm.
There's no UI, as you know, a touchscreen in any car I've driven that is intuitive and easy to use, especially when driving.
Have you seen Android Auto? Do you use Android Auto on your phone?
My wife had a Ford and actually the Subaru, and they're both terrible.
Oh, really?
And you can't, and they're all soft buttons, and you want to do the radio while driving. You're like, okay, well, let's stare at that for 20 minutes.
So Android Auto is interesting. You should install it on your phone. They have it now, and it does a couple of nice things. So Android Auto, some cars are supporting it, so the touchscreen in the car will run Android Auto, but you can also do it on your phone. So when you, like mine, when it pairs with what it knows is my car, Bluetooth, it switches my phone automatically to auto mode. Everything goes big. It's big, giant buttons. And like, it'll do a lot of speech to text too. So a text comes in, it'll auto read it and stuff like that. But the buttons are huge and the interface is really simple and you can't get out of it. Like you can't accidentally press back button or anything. It's just got these big buttons. And if you want a map, it's a big map icon. You press map and it's Google Maps, but it's changed. The interface has changed so that it's way more usable. On the phone, it's pretty good, but I think on like a decent sized touchscreen, it would actually be pretty nice. It's at least a movement towards standardization, right? Because
like a 45-inch Tesla screen or whatever.
Yeah, well, so I'd be interested to see. Good. Yeah, I'd be interested to see Tesla. It probably is pretty good, but it's not standard. I think Android Auto is interesting because you could get all the cars to run it, and then you could get into the Chrysler 300 and not accidentally shift to neutral when you're trying to change the radio, like I did, right? Like it would just be a standard interface.
It's still
a soft button.
It's still a screen with nothing to touch.
No tactile feel.
I mean, I had a car decades ago where I could drive and I could change the station and I could change the volume and I could put in a tape and I could fast forward. I could do it all without even my 8-track tape. Switch between the 4 different.
You could go Bee Gees and that would be fine.
And I could do it all while I'm driving without looking once at the console.
Yeah.
And I think we've imagined this future world where it's all behind a screen, and I think that's where we should question that assumption.
Put a 3D printer in.
Well,
yeah, 3D printer right in the car.
But that's with your assumption that there's a driver.
I have buttons. I was just gonna say I have buttons on the steering wheel.
Giant screen makes a lot of sense.
Interesting. But the buttons on right. If the car drives itself,
shapes will tell you where you are on the buttons.
Oh, that's cool.
You can actually feel which button you're on. Nice. And that's like
so
like a keyboard. Channels,
right.
Down.
What is that with?
So we have the same truck, F-150. So okay, so this is what my dashboard looks like. These buttons on the bottom here are just, I wish this image is better. They're just circles. The very first time, and at the screen, yeah, this is it. But yeah, here's like volume and stuff and whatever. But the sync interface kind of sucks because there's nested menus, and and the very first time I used it, I hit the screen because it had arrows, and I was like, oh, that must be touch. What? And then I realized I had to hit these context buttons, and the UI doesn't line up. Like it's like there's an arrow at the bottom, and so the arrow for this button, but it's like over here, and I'm like, oh crap, I don't know what button to press, and so it is kind of garbage. I can't do it while driving, that's for sure.
Look up, what is it?
But yeah, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
It's like car window opaque touch screens. So like there's a company that made, that's in the process of making automated cars where the whole window goes opaque and then you can start playing games on it. And stuff
this
like
one.
that.
Wow.
So
Great. So
the
we'll never see the
assumption is
outside
that-
world ever
Yeah,
again.
yeah. So while you're in the car, you're not going to look at the freeway anymore. You're just going to be like playing a game on the window.
Yeah, BMW's been pushing this for a while, the Holo Active thing, and it's a hologram center console thing where you can interact with it.
We're not going to be driving anymore. This is all
So the BMW guy made a really good point in Objectified. The Bengal guy said, like, it's really going to depend on what people want their cars to be. Do they want them to just show up, and then when they're not using them, do they want them to fade into the background, or do they want them to still be the, like, what our generation has grown up as is still kind of a symbol of who we are? I don't know, right? Do you want, that looks like Windows Metro.
So there's a page I want you to bring up. It's called A Brief Rant on the Future of Interaction Design.
Oh my God. A brief rant.
But yeah.
God, I love Google. Interaction design is brilliant.
Amazing.
Oh, Mr. Victor.
And
the guy typing in all
we won't get into it now, but I encourage everybody to read this because I really think like we've just accepted our future are these flat screens, but using our fingers, but our fingers are really good at doing all these kinds of things, and we're basically eliminating all of the value of our hands in these interactions. And he's talking about like being able to make a sandwich with his hands. It's just a really great read. And I think it was in this article where he's talking about some other approaches, like why aren't we building physical interfaces that mold themselves based on what you want to do, right? Like, why can't we, if I want to listen to the radio, the front of my car extrudes the radio controls,
Cool.
And
Dynamically, and then
yeah.
and then fades back when he turns it off.
Exactly. I mean,
wow.
So this is a good, the designing interactions book I mentioned from Dan Safer. A lot of this, he does a lot of this where he's, so this one specifically, the power grip and precision grip, like twisting a physical dial is an interaction that you may do like with the Kinect, like you're just twisting in midair. But I think there's two things that have happened.
The top left one was a Surface Pro.
Well, so the iPencil, right? That was their, or whatever, like pencil. That's Apple's attempt at this. Like, oh, let's give you something to do. And then the Microsoft attempt is the Surface Dial, right? If you haven't seen that, it's let's give you a physical knob, and you can actually take this knob and you can set it onto the screen, and it gives you a digital context menu, and then you rotate the physical knob and it highlights things, and then you can press down to click. And then you can take the dial off and move it away.
A good example of that is the handle in Tesla.
The what? The what?
The handle of the door.
Oh yeah,
the door
yeah.
handle.
Yeah, the door handle's awesome. It just like fades away. Yeah, that is really cool. Yeah. So it's flush. It's flush with the car until you walk up to it, and then it goes and it slides out. You stick your hand behind it and open it, and when you get in, it flushes back up with the car.
More aerodynamic then too.
Yeah, that was probably a big part of it. Yeah, that was a big part of it because all electric or whatever. But it's also just cool as hell. It's mainly that it's cool as hell. It's mainly that I'm gonna spend $100,000 on a car. It better do that. Like, there better be all kinds of robotic stuff in it if I'm spending that kind of money on a car.
So here was the quote I liked. He calls this our new technology pictures under glass. His description. Pictures under glass is an interaction paradigm of permanent numbness. It's a Novocaine drip to the wrist. It denies our hands what they do best, and yet it's the star player in every vision of the future.
Also, what about HoloLens, right? So HoloLens is like the epitome of fixing this problem, right?
Except not
Well, if
really,
you have, like,
because
haptic feedback gloves. Or
no,
something?
because like
You'd
HoloLens would be fixing it if I could do this.
Yeah.
But if I do this and it's just like I'm not touching anything, it doesn't work. Like there's like, so this is the example he puts here, right? Like that's playing the piano now for a lot of kids. There's nothing there. There's no press. There's no action of the keys. There's no weight. There's nothing. It's just dead. You're just dead. So
you're talking about the Tesla with the X value, you call the car.
yeah, there you go. Like
yeah.
Yeah. That's what was that show? Kit Knight Rider, right?
Yeah.
Kit, where are you? I'll be right there, Michael.
Well, there was the whole, like, there was the automated drive thing that they just did for the guys' commute to Tesla's headquarters.
And then he gets out and it goes and parks itself, and then the fuel filler attaches it, the plug attaches it. Okay, we do have to get to the end. It's 8 o'clock. You're gonna have to go. So the last part of this, most of the TIGs that we do, in fact, all of the TIGs we do, have some sort of exercises that go along with the reading, right? It's either some sort of like coding thing or it's like part of the book. This one does not, because it's just a lot of what we went through this month, a lot of blog reading, just concepts. So we wanted to have some applicability to this, some sort of project you guys could do. So we came up with a project idea, and we're going to have we decided this one a Google Drive folder. And so I've got a shared Google Drive folder. I will post the link. It's supposed to allow anybody to get in here, but we've tested this so far and it keeps telling people to sign in to get here. So you may have to have a Google account. They're free. I think everybody probably has one. So you may have to do that, but I'm trying to get this so anyone with the link can edit files. So we'll have this Google file. You'll be able to, or Google folder, you'll be able to put your work there. Don't work out of this folder because everyone's gonna be able to see it. They could accidentally delete your content. They could edit it, whatever. So like do your work somewhere else and then put it up here so we can share it next month. So I'll let Greg kind of introduce what the project is and how we're going to do it. We'll introduce the overall concept of the project, what we're going for, and then month by month, we're going to evolve on that project. It's just going to be able to build it up.
Okay, so the overall project that we had for this TIG is we're going to invent a robot butler, and we're going to build a system or devise a system for us to tell it what to do when we're not at home or whatever. So we're at work and we want it to do some task, whatever that may be, and we need to tell it to do that. And so that's, I don't know. I mean, I think the fun of this for us is we've never used a system like that. We have no idea what that is. We're going into it completely blind. We have no idea. We don't have any preconceived notions about what a design for programming a robot butler might be. And I think that's the fun here is we're going to collectively be trying to define that.
I think the kids would enjoy that, so they don't have to do any chores.
Yeah, right. So, so for our first, so the next section, that everyone should be reading for the next is on typography.
Yeah. So we're gonna do. I'll post this in the meetup too. What we did this month was just lesson 0 and the beginning of the introduction because we didn't have a lot of time. So we're going to read lesson 2 and 3, which are technically still part of the introduction, and actually in 4, I think. So these 3 are part of introduction, but there is one on typography. And then you can see the next logical section in hack design is the typography design. And we're going to read this whole section. So it's lessons 5, 6, 7, and 8. And they're pretty short, like this month. Like one of them's like just a couple blog posts. And so we're going to read the entire typography section. Right. So our focus is on learning about fonts, learning about the first dimension of design, which is words, right? How you convey your message, how you do it succinctly, how you do it in what fonts mean, what the layout of the font does for the message you're conveying, that sort of thing.
Right. So for the project number 1, we want to design the robot's name and a tagline for it, whatever that may be. And so we can post this, I guess, to give some, to record this somewhere. But so here's what each person should do. You want to come up with what your robot butler is, right? So why do you want a robot butler? What's your robot butler going to do for you? What problem do you have in your home that you want this robot butler to solve? Don't feel constrained to like what a Roomba can do, Imagine whatever. Like this is a creative, free process. We're not actually going to build this thing. It doesn't really have to be constrained to our current technology, I guess. Or
6 months from now, there might be a breakthrough.
Maybe
we might be able to build it.
Maybe.
We don't know, right?
So step 1, invent whatever this robot butler is. Just, think about these things about it. And then come up with a name for it. And so you want to think about what's the personality of this butler. Is it like this, friendly sort of maid, or is it like a strong, I don't know, whatever security thing? I mean, you have to think about for your purposes, what's the personality of this robot butler? How do you want to feel about it when you interact with it? It's good because you're the user, and so you can empathize with yourself, and you'll build this thing for yourself. maybe think about some physical characteristics of this made up robot that you want to have. And then you'll have read about typeface. I think we'll have resources. We looked at Google Fonts. There's other like Font Squirrel and other things for free fonts. And so what you're going to do is you're going to search through typefaces based on what you've learned. Try and find one that you think captures this robot's just personality and identity. And that'll be the name. And then you're going to find a different typeface based on what you've learned that seems to go well with it. Come up with some sort of tagline like, makes my day easy. It doesn't matter what it is, but you're just trying to be creative.
Winamp. It whips the llama's ass.
It whips the llama's ass.
Winamp.
Would be your tagline.
That's a lasting tagline.
And you're going to put those two things together.
Yeah, everybody remembers the Winamp tagline. It made no sense whatsoever.
Right. And so so you're going to do 10 variations of that. That's not a lot, actually, because I'm not talking about like completely different variations, but you're just going to, okay, well, what if I made the name this big and the tagline this small? Okay, that looks interesting. All right, well, what if I made the name small and the tagline next to it and it was also small? Or what if I changed you're just trying 10 variations.
So it's not 10 different font faces and font sizes. It's combinations of all those things. Could be different sizes, could be the same size, could be different weightings, could be different alignment, could be different layout, could be different phrasing. You may come up with a different tagline slightly, or you may think like, oh, that tagline doesn't fit with that name. Like the butler wouldn't be called that if that was the tagline. And
we're not just arbitrarily choosing this. In fact, I think IDEO is which was in the movie Objectified. It originally maybe came up with this idea, but if you go with your first idea or maybe your second idea, you may be missing out actually, because each idea leads you to the next thing. And 10 ideas, if you've put down 10 ideas, you've really pushed yourself. You really want to get to the point where like, I can't think of any other ideas. It doesn't matter. You still have to come up with the next 2. And they could be so bizarre and terrible. Who cares? You're just pushing yourself to come up with 10 different ideas. And I do it for every single design element I'm working on. I try and find 10 different ways to do it, because the first 2, even though I'm trying to come up with something specific to the user, I'm probably going to fall into old habits. And so I really have to push myself to explore. So this is a practice that really you should do with all design. So we're going to do it for this first month. So 10 variations of the name, how big it is, where it is it italic, is it colored, all these different things. And put all those together. You pick your favorite one. And should we post all of them, or just
it's up to you. I mean, it's up to you if you want to post all 10 or post your favorite, whatever. We'd like you to post whatever you feel comfortable posting in that Google shared drive. So once you feel like you've got an iteration or several iterations, and then next month we'll review them in the beginning. We'll just kind of try to go through as many of them we want to go through. We probably, I mean, if we have a full group, we might not be able to get through all of them, but we'll try to go through them all. Yeah, question?
Did you want us to make that design before reading those typography articles and then?
So that would be really interesting. That's totally up to you. If you want to take a stab at it before and then read and then look at what that changes, that would be an interesting exercise. I mean, ultimately, we're not going to review them until next month, and you will have read the whole thing at that point. So yeah, any way you want to do it, that would be that's an interesting exercise.
Okay. I wanted to share some tips about starting into this process. Number one is, I think it's really a good first step is just research. Just look up robots, look up whatever, look up, think about what your robot's going to do and look up pictures of that or things related to that. Start seeing what other people have done with fonts, with typography. This is a book that I love. It's called Steal Like an Artist. And it's for someone who, if you haven't done a lot of creative and you feel like, well, how am I going to make up these things? T.S. Eliot said, immature poets imitate, mature poets steal. Pablo Picasso, art is theft. There's all these quotes in here. David Bowie, the only art I'll ever study is stuff I can steal from. So that's okay. That's where we start, right? And what we end up creating is the unique collection of things we like, right? We go out and, oh, I like that font. I like that font. Oh, I like how that person did that thing. And then when you go to do it, that's going to be your unique interpretation of all these things that fed into you. And there's another quote about the human hand is incapable of making an exact replica or whatever. And so the point is, even if you're sort of stealing from someone, it's going to end up being your own thing anyway, because it's your own unique way of putting it together. So first thing is find some things you can steal from. You know, don't just copy them.
Leverage, not steal. Leverage.
No, stealing, it's okay because you're taking it, but to
Being
make
honest
it
with
your own
ourselves.
thing. It's not plagiarism, it's not copying. You don't want to just copy it, but you want to steal that idea and then you're going to try 10 versions of these things, right? And so it's going to turn into your own idea. So that's my first tip. My second tip is after you've read through all these things, start looking around at signage, at TV, whatever, and start trying to name pieces of fonts that you see. Start trying to, oh, that's a serif font. That's a non-serif font. That's a, the X height is tall versus short, or it's uppercase, or they put a lowercase word next to an uppercase word. Because once you start applying names to the things and you see them in your environment, they're going to start to take on sort of this life. Like you'll recognize why this looks a certain way, and you'll recognize this is different than that. So I think that's another good tip. The third one is when you're doing these 10 creations, it should be without any criticism, completely free of no editing, no analysis, no judgment. It's just creating, right? That's maybe sometimes hard to do, especially programming. We're always thinking like, is that the best way to do it? But when you're doing this sort of creative work, it should be the critic is not involved. You're just creating. And then at the end, you've got your 10 designs. Maybe you take a break. Maybe you come back later and you say, okay, how many of these are just complete and utter crap? How many of these actually are pretty good? And then you can start being critical. But those processes have to happen separately. That's tip number 3. And then the last one is sometimes it helps to do your creative work in a different space than your development work. Just like I find it very difficult to do creative work in tooling that I use for development purposes. If I switch to creative tools, I can do it much better, even if I end up sort of doing the same thing. I just find that switching to a different environment, I also like to switch maybe, rooms or something. Like maybe I sit in the living room and just change the environment. Give yourself like, I'm in a different mode, and that I find helps as well. And also paper and pen, if things that just like sketching and just, it's really experimentation and play and like all this stuff is fair game. So yeah. Anything else?
No, that's good. And the thing I'll say is, so this is the first step in this exercise. We are going to build on this idea of the robot butler, right? So by the end of this, we're going to tie the monthly exercises to the sections that we read in Hack Design. Our current plan right now is to go from typography down to interaction design. We're not going to do the rest of these. So we're going to have typography, user experience, user interface design, graphic design, mobile, and interaction design. And that is looking like 6 or 7 months, take us all the way to like September, October. The logistical thing we're up against here is that TIG always takes a break in November and December because of the holidays. We don't want to start a new track in October because that's a 1-monther. So we will either come up with a 1-month topic that's just a kind of 1-month meeting in October, or we might cut this track 1 month short to end September and do a 2-month topic. We do have a 2-month topic we can do. So we're trying to figure that out. So we might cut one, and mobile might be the one we cut, just because this particular track on mobile, all of the concepts you will need will have been covered in all of the other ones. The specifics of mobile there aren't going to be nearly as important after you've learned all the other stuff. So that's a plan. But on each of these months, we're going to have an exercise related to the robot butler that relates to the topic that you're reading. So this month is typography. Good. Okay, so we'll post to the meetup the link for the Google Drive for sharing your content. We'll post these notes that Greg had and the kind of breakdown of what we want you to do in this project and what the specific assignment is. Just know that the goal is to read through the typography section, which includes finishing the introduction, lesson 2 and 3 and 4 of the introduction, and then the entire typography section. Great. Thank you guys for coming. There's pizza left. Feel free to take it home if you are going to eat it, because we won't eat all of it. And if you don't mind folding the chairs, and watch when you try to fold the chairs, no one will figure it out. And the chairs go in the back if you don't mind. So, thanks, guys. Thank you, YouTube. Bye.